Hello friends, and welcome. My name's Popeye. Today we're playing some more Higurashi Chapter 8. We're finally approaching the end of this memory section. We've only got 2 pages to go, and this one only is 2 for now. But before we get into it, this game is premature themes. If any of the following are not for you, please find some place that you'd rather spend your time this evening. This game includes themes such as death, murder, dismemberment, blood, gore, torture, kidnapping, self-harm, body horror, child abuse, any of those things against a minor. If you miss any of what I just said, either feel free to ask again or take a look down below in the description, where I have a list of all of those trigger warnings. So last time we finished what was considered setting up the game board, which is everything that happened prior to the 7 games we played up until this point. So things such as what exactly happened during the dam conflict, some background about like Irie or Takano or Sadako's treatment beforehand, Sadako getting sick, Sadako killing her parents, Keiichi moving in, his father taking a look at the village, and we learned that this is actually world lines where they don't move there because his father doesn't feel like it's the right place for them. And in any world line where Keiichi doesn't move there, they don't have all the pieces that they need, therefore that world is an immediately lose situation. We have a bunch of stuff around Satoshi and his... You having fun there, Buck? Probably seen the cat. Yeah, the cat and the dog are having a staring contest, so expect we'll hear a bit more barking, and then hopefully we'll settle down. We have the inclusion of Hanyu in a bunch of these, and yeah, so we get to this point where finally... Oh, and we learn about Satoshi's background, how he goes missing, and he's currently being held by Irie in the basement of his clinic, where they're running tests on him. With all that set up, we're at the point where basically we're at the start of what would have been the start of most of these games, the exception being the 4th one, which is... I can't remember which one that is. Matsuribayashi, I think? Yeah. So, now we just have to watch them in the order that the games took place, for the most part. So we're going to start with this one, Onikakushi. This is number 43 if you're keeping track at home. I assume this is just going to be like a summary of all of them. In order for Keiichi Maibara to become a game piece that can lead everyone, there's something he has to learn about first. A piece that's very painful, pitiful, and sad. He has to learn about his friends. He has to learn to not doubt them. This was the issue he has in the first one, where he doubts his friends, he goes crazy, and ends up killing some of them. He doesn't know the importance of trusting his friends. He doesn't know, just yet. A slight mistrust grows into paranoia, and Keiichi Maibara is trapped within Rule X. At the end of Rule X, Keiichi leaves a sad note and dies. While it may be very bitter and very painful, it also puts him through the process of learning something very important. Hanyu didn't have to apologize. In a few days he left Hinazawa to attend his relative's funeral. Tragically, he experienced an outbreak. I think that this was necessary as his first step towards learning something important. That's right, I forgot this was a part of it. Is he leaves to go back to Tokyo for like 2-3 days for a family friend's funeral and then comes back, but that's long enough that he's been away from the village that it increases the parasite inside of him. Very first step towards smoking out Rule X and eventually defeating it. This piece was all I had. I didn't think of that though. Oh, so are these going to be like very small pieces? That'd be great. Much as I love all this information, it is a bit of an info dump. And I'm curious to see what goes on after this. Time for you to derail about coding and food. Coding's always going to derail me. Food too, probably. Fuck, you being okay? I see, Cheerio, I see your tail. Are you taunting him? This one we want. This one. How are you doing, Hat?
I'm back.
Hi, Samuses. You know, you could have just said hi and lurk. You didn't have to subscribe. I hope you've been enjoying Phasma. I know you've been playing it a lot recently. I'm glad that you've had time and people to play with. And Loki, I'm not really caught up on anything like that, but I hope you're enjoying that as well. No. Hi. Mummy Dark Samuses, is that the stream version? I'm glad she enjoyed that. Hey, let me know if you get any more of those cursed objects. I play like Phasma maybe like once a month or once every other month. So I haven't experienced any of the new ones. You told me last time. See, I would be the type of person that touches the music box anyways. I mean, it can't go any worse than when we did the summoning circle, right? Hi, cat. Tired of torturing your brother? This game piece has a very important meaning to us. Also, we're not going in order. If it was foolproof, then it would have worked. We also did it in the one house that has no hiding spots. Like no closets or anything like that. I mean, you could make it even bigger. You could get the fool... Hi, Cheery. Do you want to say hi to everyone? Say hi, bud. You could get the tarot card deck, which has the Fool card. Hey, buddy. You're a little bit stinky, you know that? Ah, you wanted to use my desk to go around to the other desk. I see. Yeah, it's random, and each of the cards has a different chance of spawning different things. And there's some that are even like a 1 or 2% chance, from my understanding. It showed us for the first time that it was possible to poke a hole in the fate of June of 1983. Start from the conclusion, everything gets taken in by Rule Y at the end. All our efforts are wasted. Yeah, enjoy your time, Samuses. We're challenging the great law that governs this game board, Rule X, head on, using everything we've learned so far from the other fragments, to prove we can defeat it. We grow by learning. A game with no hope of winning, we can discover a slight chance of victory. This piece taught us that. This game piece, Rule X, was almost completely defeated. Keiichi Maibara and our other friends won't be led astray by something as pathetic as the Hinamizawa syndrome and dancing tragedy any longer. It also taught us that rules aren't indestructible and are possible to overcome. In other words, it has given us, the ones who are on the outside of the game board, hope. It's an important fragment that serves as our turning point and the trigger for everything else. Okay, it looks like these are all pretty short, which will be nice. Yeah, like I said, I love all the information. I've learned so many things from this. Just because this is such an info dump, a lot of this is left out of the anime version. What are you playing with? Okay, so we did that, and now we're doubling back to Watanagashi. Okay. This game piece reminds us, no matter what happens on this game board, everything is due to the curse of the Sonozaki family pulling someone's strings. Now, to put it in my words, this is the piece that makes everyone else aware of the existence of Rule Z. I wish they came up with a better way of describing them as rules X, Y, and Z, because I don't remember what any of them are anymore. It's hard to notice with just this piece. This is a complicated fragment where Shion Sonozaki, while trapped in Rule X, and mistaking it for Rule Y, is hurled about, comes to notice the existence of Rule Z. It's also the piece that teaches us the rules of the game board. By the way, the piece we called Shion Sonozaki is a piece coming from the outside, from the game's point of view. She dislikes Sadako Hojo at first, but through this and another piece she learns something important. She challenges Rule X and grows to be a powerful piece to fight Rule Z. The most ridiculous part of this fragment is that it's hidden so cunningly it doesn't seem that way at all, with just a passing glance. Learn from your mistakes. Please become a powerful piece and lend me your strength to defeat my enemies. Okay, it seems like each one of these is centered around a certain character. The first one's Keiichi, second one's Rena, this one was Shion. Up next, then we'd probably have her police friend from Tokyo. We have Oishi. And then probably Hanyu herself is the last one. This is the piece of Shion Sonozaki goes mad after being taken in by Rule X. No room for sympathy. This is such a painful piece that one can only have pity. Distinctly identified as the keyhole of the padlock called Rule Z. Okay, well, what are these rules again? I need to look up these rules. Oh, and Sam says, I saw your message, I'll get back to you after stream. Okay. Igarashi rules XYZ. Okay. Rule X. A random person succumbs to Hinamizawa syndrome and is driven to acts of violence by extreme levels of paranoia. Keiichi, Rena, and Shion are the most prominent victims of this rule, as at least one of them develops the syndrome in most scenarios, and then it goes through which scenario is which person. Rule Y. Tomitake Jiro and Takano Mio are killed on the night of Watanagashi Festival without fail in every scenario. Rena considers this rule more stable than Rule X, as the method of killing is consistent in every universe, meaning that the rule is absolute and caused by a powerful and unwavering will. Although independent of Rule X, this often acts as a catalyst for Rule X. And then Rule Z is, everyone in Hinamizawa believes that the Sonozaki family is responsible for the series of deaths. However, the Sonozaki family actually has no control over them, but bluffs it to scare everyone. Okay, those are the three rules. Sumion Sonozaki wished for becomes a wind that clears out the stagnant air filling the village. This piece also teaches us an important lesson. Shion Sonozaki learns from this piece and then becomes a strong ally for Sadako Hojo. That way, maybe Sadako Hojo is a piece that represents the padlock for Rule Z. Unless she is saved, Rule Z can't be defeated. When she is saved, that means Rule Z is defeated. This piece indicates only that. The only thing Shion Sonzaki learned by gambling her life. And I think that's very important. Every time I see Sadako and Shion argue about pumpkins, I think about that. Okay, so based on what we've seen, Rule X can be overcome by those three characters, Shion, Keiichi, Rena, learning from their past mistakes in other worlds and overcoming what happened there. So they overcome it themselves with the help of their friends and each other. Rule Z is then overcome by the Sonozaki family, Oreo Sonozaki, forgiving Sadako and the Hojo family, which is only done by Keiichi once he has learned about himself. So indirectly, if Keiichi is strong enough to go over Rule X, then he can then contribute to Rule Z and overcome Rule Z. While independent, being strong enough to overcome Rule Z means he is almost surely overcoming Rule X, and has the support of his friends, meaning they aren't going to go crazy as well. This piece shows us the existence of the unreasonable Rule Z surrounding Sadako and reveals the most powerful adversary on the game board, Rule Y. Can the rules X, Y, and Z be seen now? The enemy we need to fight, the things we need to learn? All are gathered and revealed here in this fragment. At this point, it's impossible to reach Rule Y. Fighting against Rule Z's effect on Sadako is the best that can be done. In this piece, we make a mistake in our approach for fighting it. The outcome we gain through erroneous means is erroneous itself. Keiichi Maibara learned that through his own experiences. A tragedy doesn't possess the power to overcome tragedy. Violence doesn't possess the power to overcome violence. They can grasp that all the pieces on this game board will learn the true way to fight. The Takano is too powerful. The shocking end of this piece doesn't allow us to learn it that easily. What's that sound? I don't know what that sound effect was, but that sounded different. Maybe that's just letting us know that we have one piece left. I'm going to save. I'm confident we've done this in the correct order, at least according to my secrets guide. If the secrets guide is wrong, then whatever, it's a lost cause. So we have this one. And then we have those two, and then two more should reveal themselves. This piece is the only one that's so distorted, because it's from long before June 1983. Therefore, the existence of this piece has no effect whatsoever in the game we're playing on this board. But, is this really a useless piece? The identity of Rule Y has been completely exposed by now. Backing of a mighty organization that's powerful enough to swallow up the small solidarity of individuals. I almost gave up on this game because of its irrational power. That's why I'm thinking that maybe there's a piece hidden somewhere strong enough to fight against such a formidable enemy. Mamoru Akasaka works with the police headquarters in Tokyo and might have the power to stand up to such a vast conspiracy. His power withstand even Rule Y? Like Keiichi Maibara defeated Rule Z, will he be able to defeat Rule Y so easily? We need everyone's strength, so Akasaka's strength is needed as well. Okay, and this was one of the things missing before, as Akasaka wasn't there when they needed him in the last one. Okay, so completed all of these. What is this? So this is 8 times 6, that's 48. We've completed 48. We got 49, 50, and then there's 2 more. And yeah, it's this one first. The game piece that uncovered the invisible rule Y that has been pulling the strings from the beginning. Because the impression of that is so strong, it's easy to forget about something very important. Can't forget that this piece also shows the path towards destroying Rule Z. Ulrika Frude lamented Rule Z is as impossible to defeat, was hardly a match for Keiichi Maibara and the others once they learned everything they needed to. They knew the correct way to fight, and fought according to the rules of the game board. As a result, we win. And that fact is more valuable than anything for us. Keiichi Maibara taught me a lesson. No need to subject ourselves to any fate. The will to believe can defeat anything. The fate that I was always subjected to was created by Mio Takano's own conviction. What he says is correct. To defeat our conviction, we need a stronger conviction of our own. A strong will that can be pierced only by another strong will. We defeated rules X and Z and then challenged the final rule, Rule Y. But we needed more pieces. Each piece fought at its best, but the strength of our enemy's pieces led by Mio Takano were just too powerful. She didn't give us any mercy. She squished us completely and made us restart the game all over again. Although we lost, we didn't give up the resolve in our hearts. So we finally found the true culprit, and also found a clue for how to fight against her. We can't win with the pieces we have now. We don't have a powerful enough conviction or a strong enough will. Hanyu and I will keep trying. Roll or die repeatedly, looking for the greatest result, collected pieces, and try again. The will stronger than Takano. Didn't you think of giving up several times before you got to this point? We made it because you believed in me and followed me here. We're almost there. We can do it. Let's create that last piece. It'll be the ultimate piece, and we won't need anything else. The very last piece of all. Come, let's collect the pieces. Let's collect miracles. Please give me your hopes, desires, and dreams to me. These are going a lot faster than I ever could have hoped. Maybe even the game devs thought by this point, man, you are tired out from these fragments and this info dump. Okay, last one we have right now, this is piece number 50. After collecting miracles from all 7 fragments, I finally got a hold of this one. This fragment holds our final fate. Before we take a peek, please wait for just a little bit. The fate that's inside will be decided the moment we take a peek. I told you the story of the cat in the box. The cat in the box, alive or dead. If you open the box, you'll know, but you won't know until you open it. You'll be alive, dead. In other words, before you open the box, the living cat and the dead cat simultaneously coexist. But when you open the box and find out the truth, the incorrect answer disappears. The inside of the fragment is the same principle. The future we desire and the future Takano desires simultaneously coexist. They're opposing and denying each other. Once we take a peek, one of those futures will disappear. If we have enough pieces, we can take a look inside this fragment. But we've only had the same pieces lined up the same way on the game board. The game under the same conditions was Takano's complete victory. I've already tried that in the Minagoroshi fragment. We need more pieces. We need the help of a piece that's powerful enough to defeat Rule Y. Until I get hold of that piece, it's too scary to take a peek inside this fragment. How do I get such a piece? It's a piece I've never gotten a hold of before. To obtain it, I need to look just one more time. I need one more miracle to obtain that piece. Okay, and now I've unlocked piece 51, leftover fragments. What is this? Never noticed this tiny little fragment. Sometimes a fragment gets cracked and it breaks. Like how the fate we believe in cracks sometimes. Damaged fate is no longer the same fate it was. Which fate does this piece belong to? I picked up the tiny fragment and tried to match with the fragments I have in my hand. So, like, literally, at this point, Rika is in this, like, vast cosmos of her like, mind or her spirit world, whatever you want to call it. She's literally holding gems that represent these different worlds, and if she looks into them, you know, like a kaleidoscope or something like that, she can see what happened in it. So she's got these ones which represent the 7 previous world lines, the 7 previous games we played. And at one point in time she says, there used to be more, but they all broke. And now, broke and went away, or like they didn't have the power to contain them, they were left with these like 7, and those were the ones that were repeating over and over again. Are you okay, bud? Did you fall off the windowsill? But yeah, because she's mentioned other ones where, like, Keiichi doesn't arrive. There's one where she escapes up into the mountains, trying to run away from her pursuers, and lasts there for about a month. So there's these other world lines that she's tried. And now she's talking about there's some tiny, like, grains of a fragment that she hasn't noticed before that she's picking up and taking a look at. The last fragment I picked up was the one from the Himatsubushi fragment. What I picked up was the Himatsubushi fragment. Yeah, these things, whatever you want to call these crystals, maybe? This fragment was distorted from the beginning. And look, see? This tiny piece fits perfectly. This tiny fragment. How will the world change? What kind of miracle will occur? The whole world warped. I put the broken piece back where it belonged. This distortion centered on this crack. That doesn't mean I can take a peek inside. It's already past 1985. It's a time long after Rika Furuta and her friend's stories tragically ended in June 1983. Beep bzzz. Some mild interference. An order crackled through their headsets. So, I actually know where this scene is, because of one of the spin-off ones. In my free time, I've been going through some of the spin-off Higurashi games. I finished one of them probably like a week or two ago, and it's similar to Chapter 3, the Uncle Hunter chapter. That's what it's based off of. This one, the place where this is like entirely different characters. I won't go into what it is. Spoilers. If someone does want to play it. If you want to play any of these, they're called the console arcs because they're side arcs that weren't originally made by the same author as the Higurashi series, but they are officially considered canon. The author has signed off on them, and that's why they were able to make it. So the console arcs, as the name suggests, they were made for console. I believe it was PS3 that they originally came out for, and they're now out on... I believe they ported them to the Switch as well for the Switch release. If you use the 07th expansion mod, and you install on Chapter 4, that one in particular, you can do a special mod called the Console Arc mod that adds like 14 of these chapters. We played one of them on stream, the shortest one, which is based off of Onikakushi, the first chapter. I personally found it very boring in comparison to some of the other ones. The one I just finished was much better, and the one I'm on right now is starting to pick up. But this is like the main square train bus terminal, central square area of whatever major city they're in. And it is a major city. Shishibone, maybe? I'm not quite sure. I don't think they ever officially name it. But it's like an official urban center.
所轄署は15分くれることになってる。秒で制圧しろ。一人たりとも逃がすな。ターゲットの一人は外交官だ。警察だと悟られるな。有無を言わせず身柄を確保しろ。ただし間違っても危害を加えるな。外交問題に発展するぞ。
外交官特権で地元暴力団と癒着している芸道どもだ。
They launder money from drug dealing, force people into the sex trade, and pay off high-interest debts. According to the local embassy, some of the victims are younger than teenagers. Normally, this would be a simple case, but with the perpetrators being gangsters, when the police found out that a foreign diplomat was involved, things got more complicated all of a sudden. Diplomats have diplomatic immunity, so the police can't arrest them. But they knew he was an important figure in the whole scheme, so there's no doubt that he was a middleman between the foreign criminal organization and the Japanese gangsters. They couldn't let him escape. It'd be easy to deport him, but that wouldn't solve anything. The police had asked the embassy for assistance, but they denied the request. The case was on standstill at that point, when they found out that the organization was going to be selling self-defense forces classified radar and missile technology secrets. Public Safety Division then had to move on the premise to protect this classified government information. Today was the day that operation was set to go.
階段前に2人、地下入り口に2人、裏口に4人。全員体重の可能性大。普段より2人多いな。あの人にとっちゃ2秒余計にかかるだけさ。容赦ねえからな、あの人。
聞こえるか、赤坂。お前が切り込み隊長だ。用心してかかれ。よし、開始しろ。
赤坂了解。作戦を開始する。
A man suddenly appeared around the corner, downtown. It was Akasaka. He displayed none of that naivete that he did when he first met Rika. He got to the entrance of the underground club. The bouncer with a heavy foreign accent stopped him. Akasaka pulled a card out after being asked. A card that was very difficult to forge, they could only get one. The man on point, he was the only one to receive it. The bouncer let Akasaka in after confirming he had a membership card.
赤坂さん、地上の護衛突破。地下階段を降りてます。
頼むぞ、赤坂。
At the bottom of the staircase, there was an overly decorated door like the ones you'd see at a high-class club. The venomous glow of the cocktail lights, lit up, silently warning everyone that it was an entrance to a den of evil. The guard at the entrance took the membership card and put it through the card reader on the wall. Beep, an error sound. Slight perspiration could be seen on Akasaka's forehead. The guard swiped the card a couple times more. Beep, beep.
まさかカードの認証が変えられたか。赤坂にトラブルが発生したら作戦変更するぞ。赤坂の安全を速攻で確保しろ。
Expression on the guard with him steadily grew dour. His right hand reached inside his jacket, probably fingering his gun. Ding! The buzzer suddenly rang with a delightful tone, and the card reader flashed a green light. Immediately after that, the lock on the door opened up. The guard pulled his hand out from his jacket and opened up the heavy door. Loud music and colorful flashing lights spilled out from the inside. Within that, a well-dressed guard appeared to welcome Akasaka. At this moment, his first mission was accomplished. Having acted as the go signal for the remaining units, Akasaka was also in a dangerous position of being in enemy territory all by himself. The door was the biggest obstacle for their ambush. The door locked automatically, so whenever it closed, it was also sealed that way. The solid door, nearly impossible to open from the outside. Somebody had to not only open that door, but keep it open for several seconds in order for the raid to begin. Akasaka was the only one who could do that. The complex on the other side of the club was getting a new tenant. There were 2 trucks parked in front of the building. Of course, that was just a disguise. The door to one of the trucks opened, and several dozen plainclothes investigators jumped out. The same thing was happening at the back door, too. Ground-level guards noticed this and began to draw their guns, but they were taken down immediately by nearby investigators who had been pretending to be innocent bystanders. Several dozen investigators quickly went down the underground stairs. Narrow underground stairs were another obstacle to their operation. Everything would end up on the security camera, and the raid would be known within a few seconds. For that matter, a push on the security button would make it impossible for the lock to be opened from the outside. That's why they had to secure the door before the ambush. Guards on both sides of Akasaka noticed the loud footsteps coming down the stairs. The well-dressed guard also realized that something was wrong. The 3 guards shifted their attention from Akasaka to the stairs behind him. As he sensed that attention shift, Akasaka took a quick deep breath and stopped breathing entirely. 2 guards standing beside him rose suddenly into the air in strange positions. Akasaka determined his position relative to the 2 guards next to him, so he didn't need to check with his eyes. But even so, his fists had been driven into their faces with such precise accuracy. His moves were well-trained ones, and he showed no mercy against evil. They were as destructive as armor-piercing ammunition. Furthermore, Akasaka had retraced his arms at the same speed he struck. Everything looked so strange in the flashing lights. The man who witnessed all this probably couldn't figure out what had just happened. 2 guards were up in the air in strange positions, and the man who had been standing in front of him was now crouching low, when that moment shattered. The well-dressed guard was smashed in the ceiling, and shortly after came down crashing onto the floor. Later on, while slurping liquid food, he would desperately try to remember whether it was a fist or a leg that broke his jaw. He would probably never quite recall it. Rather luckily that his body fell to block the door. Akasaka didn't have to hold it open any longer.
赤坂突入するおい待て後続と合流しろ赤坂
The room was filled with loud music, but everyone had already noticed the brouhaha at the entrance. As Akasaka bellowed his warning, the screams filled the club. Most people immediately hit the floor as if trying to proclaim their innocence. All the guards reacted quickly to Akasaka. In the midst of all this, there were a few people who were trying to make their escape back alongside several guards. Akasaka restarted his breathing once and then stopped it again, ran after them like a wolf. He jumped up onto the table, smashing expensive bottles of alcohol and scattering glasses with ice cubes made from the icebergs of the Arctic. A foreign bodyguard, whose previous profession must have been a professional boxer, thoughtlessly stood in front of Akasaka. With a heavy accent, he tried to taunt his opponent. Akasaka couldn't have cared less about that. The only display the man was about to put on for him was that he might be able to block Akasaka's attack. But it wasn't even an effective guard. The power of Akasaka's punches were so incredible that they simply broke the man's bones in his attempt to block them. The man's arm warped in a strange way, and the moment after the agony showed on his face, Akasaka's left arm ground into it. Akasaka, you see, is right-handed. The man should have considered himself grateful that he was able to get away with a mere orbital fracture. Thinking that this was his chance, another man attempted to tackle Akasaka-san from behind. It seemed that no matter how strong a man is, he'd go down quickly when attacked from behind. He also assumed that Akasaka was concentrating in front of him, and he wouldn't be expecting an attack from behind to begin with. That would only be true if Akasaka was just concentrating on his front. Indeed, the attacker was very wrong, for Akasaka was no longer even thinking about the man who was before him. Akasaka knew exactly when and what was about to happen. Experience has built up this day taught him that. His body, more than his mind, remembered the timing for when menaces to society like these would make their move from behind him. Akasaka's attack continued fluidly from the left-arm punch that he struck against the ex-boxer. His left arm retracted, and at the same time he arced his left leg around beautifully as it crashed into the man approaching him from behind. A dull sound signified that his nose has been broken. Akasaka already knew that. Akasaka continued his motion and directed a decisive right blow to the side of the assailant's head. The man slammed into the wall and bounced off, rolling onto the floor. Akasaka took another breath. Under the glare of the dazzling club lights, the guards realized they're up against a demon. Yes, they realized there's no way to take him down. The guards were being paid to deal with humans. Fighting demons just wasn't in their job description. At that moment, backup finally arrived. Maybe finally isn't a suitable word. Everything that happened did so over a matter of seconds. The time it took for Akasaka to take down those 5 guards was a span of merely 2 breaths. Thanks to Akasaka's furious action, the flow of events was already set. Akasaka's intimidating first strike shattered the gang leader's will to run. They were all down on the floor, but one of them began smiling. Akasaka grabbed him by the collar and threw him against the concrete wall. Dragon-like roar, Akasaka's right fist pounded the wall right next to the diplomat's head. Immediately after that, his left fist pounded on the wall on the other side of his head. Soon enough, Akasaka pounded the wall 7 times, each just a sliver away from the diplomat. His fists were easily powerful enough to crush the man's head. The diplomat crumbled to the floor. Further investigations discovered a secret gateway route that even public safety didn't know about. Dozens of Soviet military-grade machine guns were found, and if Akasaka hadn't stopped them there in the nightclub, he would have escaped, or even worse, the operation might have ended with a brutal death toll on both sides. All thanks to how well Akasaka executed his duty, the operation was completed without a single shot fired. If the foreign diplomat was involved, they had to make sure it didn't look as though the whole operation was carried out by the police. Instead, they made it look like a simple gang war. They'd known the useless gang members to hand over the target to the police. Of course, before handing him over, they made sure he'd spilled everything he knew. The diplomatic pig would be used as the negotiation device by another part of public safety. They found plenty of evidence that said pig was tied to an underground criminal organization. Not wanting a person non grata on their hands, the embassy would likely cut all ties with him. The rest would be the business of other departments. Public safety's job was to take care of the things regular police couldn't deal with.
Akasakaは無事か? 応答しろ、Akasaka! こちらAkasaka。撤収中。また無茶をしやがって。後で出張にこってり絞られろ。
やっぱり鬼だな、赤坂さんはよ。秒殺で5人撃墜だぜ。
ありゃあ絶対空手の域を超えてるな。赤坂さんの鉄拳はすでに狂気だね。
しかし連中、銃を抜かなかったのはラッキーだったよな。赤坂さん、躊躇ねえからな。蜂の巣にしてたかもしれないぜ。
聞こえてるぞ。人を殺し屋みたいに言うな。俺は悪党に容赦しないだけだ。
The pigs he just caught were no average criminals. They had committed so many unforgivable sins. The strength behind Akasaka's fist was proportional to those sins. The heavier their sins, the more powerful his blows would be.
赤坂、急がせろ。所轄署に通報が入ってるぞ。
赤坂了解。聞こえたな。撤収を急げ。
了解。主任どうぞ。要治療が5名。手配をお願いします。
Wasn't any trace left of Akasaka's old naivete, thrown into the vigilant ace of his department. Okay, so we're establishing Akasaka here as a capable person willing to bend the rules and make things happen. Oh, and this one's not done. Akasaka was training inside a dark dojo filled with the smell of sweat and mold. The dojo was located in the middle of downtown in a small building. It wasn't that big, and they weren't that well equipped either. It certainly didn't look like a dojo a person as skilled as Akasaka would train. There were only 3 or 4 students there, including Akasaka. But this was the dojo he picked. Akasaka karate was certainly a weapon for crushing his enemies, but now he was seeking something further from it. achieve his goal, a dojo with many young students having actual physical lessons wouldn't work. He'd gone to so many different dojos, and this was the one he'd finally settled on. Every time Akasaka punched a sandbag, the heavy thud of his punch and the clang of the sandbag's chain would echo. He wasn't just punching blindly. Thought first, develop those thoughts, and then punch. More of a deep and low vibration than a proper sound. Drops of sweat scattered and dust welled up in the air. It was a perfect blow embodying the concept of one strike, one kill. But he wasn't satisfied. He closed his eyes, controlled his breathing, as if trying to hear the sound of the cry of cicadas, then he punched again. From a beginner's perspective, it looked like he was taking breaks between each. The other students training on their own glance over and sense a fearsome respect of his focused blows.
赤坂さんって警察に勤めてるって噂だぜ。マジかよ。あんな人が警官やってるなら、俺は悪いことする気なんか起きねえぜ。しかし、赤坂さんも集中力がすげえよな。あの人疲れるってことを知らねえぜ。
On his days off, Akasaka came to the dojo in the early morning. He silently trained all day. His training was no longer physical, but mental. The other students were already aware that his continuous concentration was the secret of his strength. However, that was easier said than done. As long as a person lives, they are bound by countless ties and idle thoughts. For a person to submit all his will and such singular focus is more like trying to attain enlightenment than something in the realm of martial arts. Man has tried many different methods to achieve such enlightenment. What we've learned is there's no one way to reach it. The path one takes can reach it if mastered. Karate is what Akasaka chose.
噂に聞いたんだけどよ。あの人、奥さん死んじゃってるらしいんだよ。それを忘れるために空手を始めたって噂で。
Okay, so we're in a world line where his wife is dead.
あれ？俺が聞いた話は違うぜ。任務中に女の子を救えなかったとかなんとかで、それで自分の無力さを痛感したとかなんとか。
Also probably true that if this was 1985, then in 1983, at the end of June, Riko would have died even though she asked for his help.
おい、聞こえてるぞ。人の噂話なんかしてないで。稽古をしろ。
おっす。
There was a small beeping noise. Somebody's watch was letting them know that it was noon.
赤坂さん。俺たち弁当買ってきますけど、
助かる。何でもいいぞ。頼む。
Akasaka was more pleased to be alone in the dojo than to have anyone bring him lunch. The laughed silence filled the building.
人の話なんかしやがるから。集中が途切れちまったじゃないか。
That happened because of that bit of small talk that meant he had much more training to do. He had to train much harder if he wanted to achieve enlightenment. Focus again and started to punch the sandbag. The sound was a lot lighter than before, and obviously the strength in his fists was no longer there. Realizing that he needed to take a break, Akasaka pulled out a towel from his bag and sat down. The sound of cicadas soaked into his body. The windows were open, but there was no breeze coming in. Still, he could feel the cool air just a little. Just as they said, the reason Akasaka started karate was because of Yuki's death. Of course, losing against the suspect in that kidnapping incident was one reason too, but more than that, the pain from Yuki's death was what made him start. He fell down the stairs of the hospital and died while he was on a business trip in Shishibone. He didn't get rid of that depression, so he started learning karate. In June 1983, the Great Hinamizawa disaster occurred. He realized something very important. The girl had predicted Yuki's death. In return, she wanted him to help her.
Okay. We're never getting that bag of cat food ever again.
Okay.
It's bad.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Holy. Cheerio never pooped like this.
Yeah, we're talking about you, bud.
Oh my god.
Who's Buck breaking into? Oh, he just broke into the bathroom. Thank you.
Let me see if I
Okay. His death was an accident. He could have told himself that. There was nothing he could have done. As for the girl, Rikafurude's death was different. She knew about her own death 5 years prior. When the disaster occurred, Matsuribayashi and called him to make sure he was okay. Then he found out about everything. He was caught up, he fell into despair. Get your nails trimmed, bud.
No.
Okay. Rikafurude was the turning point in his life. He believed what she predicted and did something about it. Maybe Yuki wouldn't have had to fall down the stairs. He took the oath to serve the public as a police officer, yet he didn't even notice the plea for help from a little girl. He shoved aside the conspiracy surrounding her until it was too late. He had 5 years to do something about it, but he didn't do anything, and she died. Visiting Hinamizawa for the kidnapping case, the minister's grandson was definitely the turning point in his life. If he'd only listened to what the girl had said, Yuki would have never died. He could have been there to help Rikafurude. Those two things continued to haunt him. The investigation into the series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa that he heard about from Moishi put on indefinite hiatus because of the disaster. It was apparent to both of them that there was some conspiracy behind it all. To challenge such things, he needed all the strength and experience that he could muster. Devoting himself to gain strength, but it was too late. Everything had already ended. While he was stuck in this dilemma, the dojo's instructor admonished him. There's nothing one can do about what's already done. In that case, the only thing you can do is train diligently so if the same thing is to happen again, you'll be able to save a person in need. It's all too late. Everything is already over. Yuki died in the accident. Hinamizawa was destroyed in the gas disaster. Rika-chan was murdered as her intestines were ripped out while she was alive. Shit. I was too obsessed with Yuki's death, and I couldn't hear the girl's pleas for help. If I'd listened to her, I could have prevented Yuki's accident also. Damn it. Shit.
Fuck. Ass.
Akasaka clutched his hair and looked up. He noticed a small shrine overhead that protected the dojo. Akasaka respected both Shinto and Buddhism, but he never thought of praying to gods in times of despair. For the first time, he felt like praying for help. If something he was capable of doing himself, he would never even consider praying. But as it was something he couldn't resolve on his own, he prayed. It was a very selfish wish. If his wish were to come true, everyone in the whole world would wish for the same thing.
もう一度あの時に戻らせてくれ。そうしたら今度こそ俺は二人を救う。
At that moment, Akasaka's body felt very light. It was more like he was losing his balance, as if he was fainting. Perhaps that was because he shouted so loudly after training his brain was lacking in oxygen. But he couldn't take his eyes off the shrine.
ありがとう、赤坂。あなたの思いが私たちにはとても必要だった。
Is this a hallucination? Akasaka felt like a stranger was talking to him.
私たちが奇跡を願い、あなたも奇跡を願わなければ奇跡は起こらない。だって奇跡は全員が願わなかったら起こらない。双方が手を伸ばし合わなかったら届かない。
He didn't know what she was trying to say, but somehow it felt like he couldn't miss a single word of it. It felt like it was something very, very important.
もしあなたも望んでくれるなら私たちに奇跡を。それは欠けたかけらを結び合わせより大きな大きなかけらを生み出すきっかけになる。あなたのたった一つの決意が全員の思いや運命に大きな影響を及ぼすこともあるのだから。
あの時にもう一度 時間を巻き戻してくれるというのか。
うん、そんなこと私にはできないのです。私にできるのは気づかせることだけ。一つのかけらだけでは学べないことを他のかけらで学んだことを気づかせてあげるだけ。だからこの欠けたかけらをあるべきところへ戻すだけ。それでもきっと大きな奇跡、もっともその奇跡をあなたはきっと気づかないだろうけれど。
Thank you, Akasaka. Thank you for remembering me. I don't even know how much time I've spent asking you for help. Finally, it reached you. Say it one more time. Please help me. Please help us. Smile, buddy. Okay, so I think now, yeah, we go back to this fragment now that we have the leftover fragment because it was damaged. It was long. It was really long. You okay? Is your spirit still alive? We have all the pieces we want lined up on the game board. This is everything we have, so I can go up against Takano and our minions in the game of Fate in June of 1983. I think maybe we have everything. And last but not least, Hanyu, it's you. The time you have left to be a piece is limited. That doesn't mean you can't show up in the game. Shall we begin? I put in hundreds of years just for this moment. Someone once suggested that believing is like placing a bet, coins of hope. In other words, believing means taking a risk. You gain something if you win, but you lose something if you fail. So with every gamble, try to make sure we win and then bet a coin. As with any gamble, there's no guarantee of victory. Sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. That's how you increase the number of coins you have. If you keep losing, you don't want to continue gambling. It's then that you realize that if you don't gamble, you don't have to lose anything. Not gambling on anything is the same as not believing in anything. Not believing in anything is the same as not involving yourself in anything. Not involving yourself in anything is the same as not existing. Therefore, she didn't exist. The one coin she had in her heart was the last one. If she lost it, she'd disappear. That was why she was hesitating to make a bet. She'd been running, trying not to get involved in any type of match because she was afraid of betting it by accident. Just like in a game of poker, she couldn't lose her coin by folding, or she could lose her coin by folding. She tried not to lose her last coin. That meant she was going to lose it eventually anyway. There was something she didn't know. Actually, I didn't know it at the time either. The more coins bet into the pool, the higher our chance of winning this game. In other words, the more frightened we are, the more we'll keep losing the game before us. Just like carrying a portable shrine, it's impossible to carry such a heavy thing by oneself. When people put their strength together, they can lift it easily. There's a clear borderline between too heavy to lift and easily lifted. Just like how the balance on the scale tips by just a little weight. The big heavy shrine before us couldn't be lifted. Everyone tried their hardest to raise it, but couldn't. I didn't help because I was sure it couldn't budge. I don't participate in games I know I can't win, so I didn't bet my coin. But that was wrong of me. Maybe the portable shrine could have been lifted if I'd joined. For the longest time I'd been pretending to be a bystander. I always thought I was just there to find out if my coin was worth betting or not. But that was wrong. I'm not just an onlooker, nor should I be a bystander. I should have participated. The game I've been facing doesn't look like a game I can win. It doesn't look like a game that's worth betting on. If by betting on it, or by participating in it, by believing in it, the outcome might change. To gamble on something is the same as to believe in something. To believe in something is the same as to be involved in something. To be involved in something is the same as to exist. Therefore, she existed.
Hi, 皆さん。朝のホームルームを始めますよ。おしゃべりはおしまいです。委員長、号令。起立。礼。おはようございます。着席。
It's an ordinary morning. The only difference is that it started a little later than usual. Chi-sensei normally arrives in the classroom right away, but she's a little late today. Why was she late for homeroom? The rumors were already stirring with the classroom before she arrived. Chi-sensei gave a cue, and a girl peeked in the room timidly. Voices of welcome, delight, and surprise all mixed together and filled the classroom.
あれリカちゃんの親戚なの？そうなのですよ。僕の登園の親戚なのです。もう私もびっくりでございますのよ。リカに親戚がいたなんて知りませんでしたわ。いやいや、おじさんも知らなかったよ。まあ、御三家筋は結構ややこしいからね。私の知らない縁石がいたとしてもありえないことじゃないよ。でもやっぱりリカちゃんの親戚だよね。はう、かいいよ。
All my classmates had gotten excited. The new girl looked rather intimidated by it all. Rika-chan is rather carefree, but this Hanyu seems like the complete opposite. She's more like a shy woodland animal. The exact type that Rena loves. Look, see? Rena's ready to swallow her whole.
では、羽生さん、自己紹介をしてください。皆さんは静かに聞くように。はい、それでは羽生さん、どうぞ。
Chi-sensei left the podium and encouraged Hanyu to take over. Okay. Since we haven't seen her like this before, we have to look at all the art. Does she fold her arms in front or behind? Even greater pressure of the silence left her standing there timidly for a little bit. That's understandable. It's been very nerve-wracking to watch, though.
僕の親戚なのですよ。みんな仲良くしてあげてほしいです。
Rika-chan can tell she's too nervous to introduce herself. He's right to break the silence. Pressuring her like that isn't fair. Why decide to make it more lively?
リカちゃんと同じフルデさんなんだね。フルデさんが2人になっちゃった。 り返ってしまいましたよ。
We generally called each other by our first names here. She's one of us starting today, so we should call her by her first name too.
なら決まりだね。今日からあんたのことは羽生って呼ぶよ。私はクラス委員長の園崎ミオン。ミオンでいいからね。北条聡子でございますわよ。よろしくですわよ、羽生さん。
Daiki told me to parents run a tofu shop. Please come by anytime. Why aren't these guys voiced? They were voiced previously. I'm Suguru Okamura. Ask me anything if you don't know anything. And then random girl A is voiced. Don't understand this at all. Our classmates fell over each other to introduce themselves. Everyone tried to get her to remember their names so they could be friends. A friendly atmosphere swelled in the room. I've only just transferred recently myself. This is exactly how it was on my first day too. I remember how nervous I was and how much I appreciated this as a result. I know more than anyone how nerve-wracking it is to be a new student. I should look after her.
そうだね。早くクラスに馴染めるようにしてあげないとね。
そっか。レナも去年は転校生だったんだよな、確か。レナも転校してきた時は緊張したか。
うん。でもみーちゃんたちがすごく親切にしてくれたからすぐに馴染めたんだよ。まあね。ニューカマーを迎えるのも御三家の大切な仕事だからね。
都合のいい時だけ御三家になるな、お前は。でもミオンなんかに世話になって馴染めたってのは確かにそうだ。
なら今度はケイちゃんがお世話をするってことになるんじゃないかな。
そうだな。レナだって転校生だったのにその次に来た俺に世話をしてくれたもんな。なら今度は俺が新しい転校生に親切にする番ってことだな。
A new student always dramatically changes the atmosphere of a class. Even my attitude has changed. We decide together and hand you during lunch break.
それでは羽生への質問は1人1個ずつだからね。彼女の本質に迫るディープな質問をズバリ言ってみよう。さあさあ、1番は誰？好きな食べ物は何ですか？甘いお菓子はみんな大好きなのです。一番好きなのはシュークリームなのですよ。あら、それは素敵ですわね。私も大好物でしたよ。沖宮に美味しい洋菓子のお店がありますの。今度案内して差し上げましたよ。はいはい、男ども聞こえたね。羽生の好感度を稼ぐにはシュークリームだよ。安いやつより高級店の高くて美味しいやつが効果的。さあ次の質問は誰かな？ないならおじさんが好きな子のタイプとか聞いちゃうよ。
Everyone kept asking Honey questions, and she looked all panicky again. Guess this is like a traditional ceremony for a new student. I remember this is exactly how my first day went. Mion and Sadako seemed amused, so it must be the same for them too. I noticed Rena was watching the scene before with a distant look in her eyes. She's probably remembering her first day as well.
転校してきた時を思い出してるのか？他のことを考えてたな。羽生をお持ち帰りする算段でもしてるんだろう。
そんなこと考えてないよ。羽生ちゃんがシュークリームが大好きなこととか、レナのうちに美味しいシュークリームがあるんだよ、食べにおいでとか全然考えてないんだよ。お持ち帰り。
明日からいきなり不登校になったらこりゃレナのせいに違いないな。
そんなのひどいよ。
As we watched Tanya and our classmates have fun, Ren and I laughed together.
ねえケイチくん、なんだか嬉しいね。
嬉しいよな。新しいクラスメートを迎えるのは。
そうじゃなくて、この子、たまに見かけてた気がするの。
羽生か？引っ越し前の下見とかで来た時とかかな。レナって記憶力いいな。
そういうのじゃなくて、羽生ちゃんはもっと前からいて、レナたちのすぐ近くでみんなで遊んでるのをずっと見てた気がするの。ずーっと。あれ？レナだけ？ケイチ君も気づいてたよね。
いや、俺は全然見たことはないんだが、レナは面識があるってことなのか？
From what I can see, this is the first time Mion and Sadako have met Hanyu. Been that close to us, like Rena said, it's impossible that none of us would remember her.
気のせいじゃねえのか？第一、羽生は転校生なんだぜ。村にそんなにしょっちゅういたはずないじゃないか。
そうかな。たまに見かけたような気がするんだけどな。
気のせい気のせい。羽生だってついさっき転校前は遠くに住んでたって言ってたじゃないか。
でもレナは見たんだけどな。
Rena looked like she was trying to remember more. It's probably one of those deja vu experiences. Though, it is the first time you see something. Feels like you've seen it
別にど
before.
うでもいいだろ。今はここにいるんだからさ。
そうなんだよね。あんなにもレナたちの輪の中に入りたそうにしていたから、仲間に加われてよかったねって。
Rena smiled with tears in her eyes. I looked over at her. Rika-chan was wearing the same expression. It made no sense to me why those two looked that way. As soon as Sadako came over and pulled a prank on me, I forgot all about it. These are the words that signal the best time of the school day. As soon as the last period ends, my classmates ran out of the room. Honey was popular all day today. She's Rika-chan's age, so all the lower grade students gathered around her. Older students like me and Mion didn't have a chance to get close to her.
まあクラスとしてはさ、こわもての上級生が転校してくるよりは自分たちと同い年くらいの可愛い転校生の方が嬉しいだろうね。
ケイチ君、最初の頃は緊張してたのか、なんだか怖そうな顔をしてたもんね。
おいおい、そりゃひどいぜ。俺だってクラスに早く馴染もうとフレンドリーに接してたってのよ。
どこがフレンドリーでございましたの？私、転校してきて早々にいきなりケイチさんにデコピンを食らってますのよ。
それは転校初日の教室デビューの出花をトラップ、しかも椅子の背には画鋲で、机の中にはカエルまで入ってたぞ。
転校生が職員室にいると聞いて様子を見に行った時、ケイチがとても緊張してるように見えたので、だからサトコが緊張をほぐしてやろうと思ったに違いないのです。ひなみ沢の先輩として気を利かせて差し上げたんでしたよ。
チェ、絶対それだけはありえねえな。
Although that blackboard eraser trap sure did ease my tension, Sadako will be so pleased with herself if I tell her that, so I'll never admit it.
羽生ちゃんはみんなと帰ったね。放課後は誰と遊ぶか今頃引っ張りだこなんじゃないかな。
でもやっぱり初日は疲れるもんだよな。きっと帰ったらバタンキューだぜ。
違いありませんわね。
さてさて皆の衆、このところ私のバイトのせいでだいぶ長いことご無沙汰だったね。部活メンバーの招集だ。
待ちかねてましてよ。ご無沙汰が過ぎると鈍ってしまいましたよ。ねえ、誰
かの罰ゲームをかわいそしないと僕も退屈してしまいますです。はうー、レナは負けないんだよ。久しぶりだから手加減なんかしないんだよ。
どうやらみんな欲求不満でだいぶエネルギーを持て余してたようだね。そうでなくちゃおじさんも叩き潰す甲斐がないってもんだよ。
やる気満々みたいじゃねえか。だがな、あいにく俺の今日の調子は絶好調だ。しくじったなミオン。今日もバイトに行ってた方が良かったと後悔することになるぜ。
Mion had to work quite a bit lately because her uncle's shop is short on staff. She hasn't done any club activities for a long while. For us, club activities are the main reason we come to school. In a way, we live for these short few hours after school. No club activities, there's no point in coming here at all, so it only makes sense for us to be excited about having our meeting again.
こりゃあ生半可なゲームじゃみんなの渇きを癒せそうにないね。何のゲームで料理してやろうかね。
Mion looked into the club locker. I'm always curious about what's in that locker and how much of it there is. I swear there's more in there than it can realistically hold. Just then we heard the door open.
あれ、羽生ちゃん？こんにちは、なのです。あら、どうなさいましたの？忘れ物でございますの？
I thought she'd already gone home. She forget her lunchbox or something? It's not that big of a deal to forget a textbook, but you can't forget a lunchbox.
羽生、どうしたの？なんか探し物？
Honey looked at us apologetically. What is it? Are we in the way? She kept staring at us timidly. Are we sitting in Hanmi's seat? No, that's not it.
どうしたの、羽生ちゃん？何か困りごとかな？
Trying to talk to her, but there's no communication to be had. Almost like trying to have a conversation with a stray cat. What is this? Anya's fixated on something. She followed her gaze and found Rika-chan. Anya's apologetic gaze was directed at Rika-chan.
僕は何も言いませんです。羽生がそうしたいなら自分の口で言うと良いのです。
With that, I finally figured it out. Honey wanted to say something, but she didn't know how to say it, so she wanted Rika-chan to say it for her. But Rika-chan told her to say it for herself. In other words, we need to listen to what Honey has to say. We patiently waited for Honey to speak up. When I think about what happened this morning, I kind of realize silence makes her even more nervous. Kinda noticing that, I talked to her in this sweet tone of voice.
どうしたの、羽生ちゃん？レナにこっそり話して。相談に乗ってあげるよ。お、何？もう一回言って。ほうほう。
Rena raised her voice.
何よ、おじさんにも教えてよ。何なのよ一体。
本当にいいの？どうしたんでございますの？もごもご言われては気持ちよくありませんでしたよ。僕も部活に混ぜてもらいたいのです。
Honey said it loudly as if to shake off her embarrassment.
こりゃまだ驚いた。どこで誰におじさんたちのことを聞いたのやら。
僕も入れてほしいのです。僕も部活に混ぜてほしいなのです。よく自分で言えましたです。パチパチパチ。
Rika-chan must have known that Hanya wanted to join the club all along. He unfolded her arms with a smile and stared at Hanyu as if praising her. Needless to say, Hanyu was intimidated.
自分から好んで七に飛び込みたがるとは、こりゃとんでもない命知らずがいたもんだよ。でもね、うちの部活はそんじょそこらのおままごととは違うんだ。選ばれた者が試練をくぐり抜けた末にようやく入部を許される栄光の部活なんだよ。入れてください、はいそうですかってわけにゃいかないね。
あのね、羽生ちゃん、みーちゃんの部活は見てる分にはとっても楽しいかもしれないけど、大変なんだよ。覚悟の上なのです。勝って当然。負けたらとんでもないことになってしまいますのよ。その覚悟は終わりですこと。僕も負けないのですよ。それに。
He swallowed once, and said what was on her mind. It sounded like a big thing to say for her, though it had a much deeper meaning.
かつての僕は負けるのが嫌で、全ての勝負から逃げていましたのです。でも逃げることは負けることにすら劣ること。負ける痛みにくじけず戦い続けて初めて勝ちを得られるのだと教えてもらいましたのですから。羽生。
Mion realized that although she looks timid, Hanyu is actually very, very courageous. She grinned. Looks like she's grown fond of her.
へえ、なかなかどうして大したどうだよミオ。せっかくだから試してやったらいいじゃねえかよ。入部試験。
我が部にふさわしいかどうか、最低数週間の観察を経てようやく受けられる入部試験を転校初日からとはね。さてどうしたものか。
Mion pretended to be stubborn, but in reality, she was simply playing with her. She actually didn't want her to join, she would have refused her right away. Of course, if Hanyu was bothered by this kind of intimidation, she wouldn't be able to survive in this club.
レナとサトコが今話したと思うけど、うちの部は厳しいよ。勝って当然。狙うは1位のみ。間違って最下位になった日にゃ、生まれてきたことを後悔するような大変な目に遭わされるんだよ。
でも僕も頑張るのです。でも罰ゲームだってとっても楽しいんだよ。
Hanyu-chan, you've been watching the whole time, huh? Been wanting to join for the longest time, huh? Got the feeling that Rena just mumbled something like that.
ミオ、もったいぶらないで試してやればいいじゃねえかよ。俺だってそいつをくぐって入部を許可されたはずだぜ。
そうですわよ。一つ羽生さんの腕っぷしを見てやろうじゃありませんの。羽生ちゃん頑張ろう。レナは手加減しないからね。僕だって手加減しないのです。僕は羽生にだけ手加減しないのです。
よーし、気に入った。来るで羽生、あんたに我が部の入部試験を許可する。となりゃ話は変わるね。羽生にも分かるゲームにしてあげないとね。どれがいいかな。おこいつがいいかな。
Mion threw a deck of cards onto the desk. Does this mean?
誰でも分かるゲームでいこう。トランプのジジ抜きはどうかな。
望むところなのです。
Here she goes. This is exactly what I had to endure when I went through this entrance exam. This is the marked tile deck.
なかなか威勢のいい返事でございます。
The problem with this is that this Keiichi's only been here for like 3 weeks to memorize this deck of cards. They've probably only played with like once or twice. If that. Like maybe once tops. Meanwhile, Hanyu's had literally hundreds of years to memorize this deck of cards. So I think Keiichi's still gonna lose. Most of the cards have scratches on the back, so by memorizing the scratches, you can tell what card it is. In other words, the more you play this game, the better you are at it. This is our simple way of being mean to newcomers. It sure brings back memories. I had to go through this too. This happened recently, but I feel so nostalgic. Because literally, we haven't had this one since the first game.
あの時みんなが手加減なしで全力で俺を叩き潰してくれたように俺も全力で叩き潰してやるからな。なあみんな。お覚悟なさいませですわよ、羽生さん。
さあさあ、部活メンバーの末席を望むならそれにふさわしい顔を自ら示してみな。
はいなのです。
その手札を右から言うよ。エース3、4、7、ジャック、クイーン。
今さら手で隠したってメニューですわよ。ごめんね、ハニーちゃん。これがスペードのエースだよね。あったり
思い知ったな、羽生。入部試験の洗礼を思い知れ。
ケイイチは自分の入部試験の恨みが混じりまくりなのです。
ほらほら、ケイちゃん、そんなこと言ってていいの？羽生、ケイちゃんの右のカードで上がれるよ。
上がりましたのです。
とわー、きったねー。こうなりゃ本気モードでいくぜ。よくもこの俺を怒らせたな。羽生、お前初日の下校からいきなり尻尾付きブルマの首輪付き四つん這いで帰宅したのか。
あらあら、それはむしろケイイチさんにこそ似合いましたよ。いいねいいね。それをレナがお持ち帰り。僕もケイイチに恥ずかしい罰ゲームをしてやりますのです。
いい提案だね。おじさんはそいつになるよ。
なんでいつの間にか俺包囲網が完成してるんだよ。上等だ。てめえら全員四つん這いで下校させてやるぜ。
How did they get a car horn in there?
Hi, バンケットより後方。スピーチあと一人で乾杯に入ります。準備できてるね。
後方 OK です。内部全然聞こえないんで、スピーチが終わるタイミングでコールをお願いします。
Okay, so this is the event that Takano's at for the club.
各宅にビールは10本ずつだよ。ちゃんと自分の縄張りにスムーズに運んでね。
And waiters with bow ties got bottles of beer ready for a toast. There are several dozen tables with white tablecloths on them in the banquet room. Approximately 8 people are sitting at each table, so there's at least a few hundred people there. The banquet room is teeming with excitement. There are many plates of different kinds of food on each table. A sushi platter, a sashimi platter, a fruit platter, a cat walking by. Also along the wall there are cooks ready to serve fresh sashimi. All the guests appear to be well-mannered gentlemen, and obviously they're notable people from different fields. Huge and beautiful chandelier above them clearly tells that this hotel holds a status good enough for those famous people. An elderly gentleman was giving a long speech on the stage before making a toast. Usually people don't like such long speeches, especially if it's before a toast. Guests are actually excited with his speech. Maybe fervor was a pleasant way to put it. Probably more accurate to say their excitement was bizarre. The way Japan accepted the demand for unconditional surrender on the day they did the Pacific War ended. In other words, even if they had to take care of further business, the war ended that day according to international law. From that day on, there was peace. If any troops invaded Japanese land during that peace, it would be an encroachment against Japan. No matter what the Soviet Union says, the Northern Territories are Japanese land. It should be clear to everyone that they invaded illegally. Hear, hear. Now they want to settle by returning a mere 2 islands to us? Who do they think they're kidding? Listen. Abomai, Shikotan, Kunashir, Iturup are Japanese territory. I assume these are all other islands. Their total area is equal to entire prefecture. What do you think if the Soviets invaded and occupied one of our prefectures? Settle for just getting half of the prefecture back? No, you wouldn't. You'd have the entirety returned to you. Yet the Soviets are brazenly sitting there claiming vested rights to the land. This is no joke. We must strongly oppose this to the bitter end. Return all the northern islands. Our nation must demonstrate unwavering resolve on that point. Thunderous applause filled the banquet room. All the gentlemen agreed and expressed that they felt the same way by cheering him on. In all that hubbub, there were 2 people standing by the wall who didn't seem to fit in with the rest. They were wearing sharp-looking suits, but looking a little too old to be called young men. They were certainly young compared to all the elderly gentlemen in the banquet room. So we have Akasaka, and then Nimi was one of the other police officers with him during the raid. War only happened 40 years ago. In other words, a generation that's interested in voting with the generation from before the war.
よく空襲の話をします。昔は水道橋のあたりに住んでて、空襲で家族を全員失って焼け野原を一人さまよった。そうさ。
Our parents went through the war. They shed their blood, sweat, and tears believing it was for the good of the nation. We well lost the war, but they believe the war still brought about change that serves as the foundation for the peace we have today. I hear that a lot. If Japan hadn't fought in the war, the Asian countries would still be Western colonies. No way we could have won, but we needed to fight in that war, something like that. In that case, no matter how much they preach pacifism, politicians can ignore the pre-war generation. War is bad, we should never again fight a war. That war was necessary. Unless they say things like that, it's like they're denying the very lives that generation lived.
そういう主義主張も本心でしているなら一意見の主張として立派だと思う。だが彼らの票が欲しくて表向きだけ調子を合わせてる卑劣な政治家もいる。そういう迎合的な政治家が後を絶たない限り解雇主義は永遠に終わらないのさ。
そうして若者とお年寄りの意識の格差は多分1000年経っても相変わらず。
We'll just keep repeating that war was justified yet regrettable every time an election takes place. When will our country ever be freed from that cycle?
若者がちゃんと選挙に行け。そして安易な迎合にごまかされずちゃんと政策を考えてるやつに投票しろ。実現可能な政策だぞ。
ああ、いますね。明らかに実現不可能な公約を掲げてる候補者っています。あ、赤塚さん、F 択ってあれじゃないですか。
あのご婦人だな。行くぞ。
The speech had ended, and the elderly gentlemen were giving the man on the stage a standing ovation. 2 men walked through the crowd and approached an old lady in a kimono.
はい、私ですけれども。
昨日お電話で約束させていただきましたものです。赤坂と申します。
主人はね、ずっと日本のためにと身を粉にして働いてきたんですのよ。それなのに
奥さんの胸中深くお察しします。
It wasn't really anything out of the ordinary. Nobody could remember if there had been a donation or not, so a handful of politicians were questioned. As a result, some came up with a scheme to blame a sickly elderly man who had already retired. Only a short time to live anyway, it was the perfect fit for them. The elderly man had already been sick in bed, and the shock of his friends betraying him had taken away his will to live. The only thing his wife could do was simply watch him suffer. She kept crying while telling the men about her husband's
ご主人の無
achievements.
実が間違いなければ必ずや裁判官は正義の判決を下すでしょう。大丈夫です。濡れ衣は必ず晴らせます。
そんなのは分かっています。だって無実なんですから。でもね、判決が出るまでお国のためにとあれだけ働いてきて、あれじゃあ死んでも死にきれません。
Akasaka nodded and tried to find the right words to say to her. His colleague rummaged through a pile of paperwork behind him. Papers were filled with fine print, and it would be hard for non-look to tell exactly what they were. The way he was looking at it made it clear that they contained something very important.
こいつはすごい資料です。金の動きが完全に網羅されてます。
Akasaka gave him a signal to remind him that this wasn't the place to be looking through those documents.
この他には書類束のようなものはありませんね。
ええ。主人の金庫に入っていた文書はそれで全てです。どうかそれで恩知らずな連中に一泡吹かせてやってください。あれだけ主人に世話になっておきながら
奥さん、この文章の内容には一部ご主人にとって不利益な内容も含まれていますが、それは
それは政治はね、きれい事だけじゃないんです。私だって政治家の妻ですのよ。
ご協力を感謝します。この書類は必ず巨大な不正を暴くために使用します。
一つだけよろしいですか。それを公表するのは主人が亡くなるまで待ってもらえませんか。
Paperwork Akasaka received was something her husband intended to take to the grave with him. Something that shouldn't exist in this world. But when public, her husband's name would be disgraced. Akasaka
わ
nodded.
かりました。誓ってお約束します。
Vast public funds were moving. In Kasumigaseki, funds were issued to sub-branches to carry out national policies. The various ideas over those public funds always came together. To never end to those trying to poke a straw in it and suck it out like a mosquito. Excess dividends, cordial patronage, profits for organizations that benefited themselves. Many financiers approached and adhered to officials and politicians hoping to earn those gains. And the bureaucrats constantly indulged them. That's how Japanese corruption works. These illegal pipes form bypass after bypass, Kasumigaseki siphoning off public funds for their profit. To find and destroy those pipes is of course in the national interest. But eliminating illegal expenditures isn't as simple as all that. There are important people connected to those pipes, and those people are investigated and a major political scandal takes place. The reason why the government doesn't investigate such illegal expenditures is not only to protect vested interests, but also because they are conscious of the damage these scandals can cause politically. To put it more succinctly, the government can't endure the pain of pushing pus out of a wound. The closer the exposed subject is to the top, the greater the pain faced by the government. That affects the cabinet approval rating. The closer the subject is to the core, the more extensive the damage to the heart. The secret investigation Akasaka was leading went as close to the heart as it got, and caused a collapse of the administration from shock. Akasaka was tipped off that a huge amount of public funding was leaking out through an alumni organization of the 7 Imperial Universities, so he and his colleagues had been conducting a secret investigation into the matter for a long time. His target was tightly knit, but he learned the wife of one of the organization's senior members bore strong resentment toward them after her husband was made their scapegoat. He managed to contact her. Because of that, he'd gotten his hands on extremely important information. Of course, one of those is the Alphabet Project, which funds Takano's research.
だいぶ外堀が埋まってきたようだね。特に赤坂くんが入手した資料は相当ショッキングなものだよ。随分苦労したでしょう。お疲れさん。
いえ。
A small reading room was filled with boxes that were in turn filled with documents. A whiteboard was filled with cramped writing, too. A few of the investigators in the meeting room, which was also filled with smoke, were reading the documents intensely. Their intimidating manner clearly indicated that they were police officers with a great deal of experience. Akasaka was one of those men. It had been a while since Mamoru Akasaka was transferred to this department. He worked on the case of the kidnapping of Minister Inugai's grandson. He had been a rookie, but now he was an experienced investigator. After a knock on the door, an elderly man entered the room. Everyone straightened up all at once.
室長、お疲れ様です。
お疲れさん。立たなくていい。楽にしてくれ。諸君に今日は素晴らしいプレゼントを持ってきたぞ。カノ、お前を息子の授業参観に行かせてやる。
The meeting room was filled with sighs, tinged with exasperation and resignation. It certainly wasn't because any of them hated getting to go to Parents' Day.
やっぱりな。そろそろ頃合いだと思ってたんですよ。くそ。
Akasaka's colleague complained. And so close to getting through to the issue, they had such strong evidence. Akasaka, on his part, wasn't too disturbed. This had happened several times in the past, and considering how hot the documents he obtained were, it was easy enough to predict. The case was suddenly transferred to another department. That meant their investigation ended here. The new department was supposed to continue the investigation to expose injustices. That's never happened once before. That was just an excuse. The investigation had been terminated because of pressure from above.
くそだね。俺たちが今日まで捜査してきたのは
海を出す痛みがどの程度か測るためだろうな。その結果、痛みに耐えられない規模だということが分かり、荒領事を断念したってことだろう。
In that sense, their hard work wasn't wasted. Because of it, the investigation was terminated. Akasaka understood that, but his colleague wasn't yet mature enough to understand. Of course, Akasaka's sense of justice was displeased by this. He felt frustrated with his superiors who had hesitated to expose the truth. He was mature enough to know that he couldn't say that out
資料
loud.
の整理と引き継ぎについては今後向こうと調整していく。とりあえずみんな長く休んでないだろう。5時を待たなくていいぞ。残務整理は明日話し合い。あと振り替え休暇の消化をしよう。ちゃんと消化して神さん孝行しろよ。主査は俺と来てくれ。以上だ。
It was a long secret investigation left a bad taste in his mouth with this resolution. He managed during the holiday until the next incident arrived.
室長のお言葉に甘えますかね。みんな、今日は早く帰って休みな。
こういう時早帰りすると不倫の現場に出くわしたりしちゃうんですよね。バカだな。お前知らないだろ。赤坂さんとこは熱愛夫婦だぞ。毎晩別当の公衆電話からラブコールかけてるの知らないのかよ。
赤坂んところはいいよな。うちの女房なんてそりゃそっけないもんだよ。
Akasaka smiled bitterly as he gathered the documents in his hands. One of the pages fell to the floor, a page from a huge pile of papers documenting illegal expenditures. They exposed the illegal expenditures of the Alphabet Project, the research team for the next generation of hardware in the Defense Agency. It was entirely possible that this project was created in the first place for the purpose of funneling these illegal expenditures. When he saw the paper, one thing caught Akasaka's eye. He picked it up, looked at it, and tried to remember. There was a list of people who illegally received public funds. There was also a list of retirees who were still very much in love with money. There should have been no connection between those people and Akasaka. However, there's one thing that caught his attention. As soon as he said it, all sorts of memories resurfaced. Yes, the Irie Clinic. He was working on the case of the minister Unigai's grandson's abduction. Got into a scuffle with the suspect and became injured. He was taken to the local clinic. As he recalled, the name of that clinic was the Irie Clinic. He started to remember one thing after another. First experience with wading into the muck. It was burned into his mind like a fresh memory, and he could vividly recall everything that happened. His daughter was about to be born, and he didn't really want to go to Hinamizawa. Met with Oishi, who taught him a lot of important things. He also met a girl in that village. Her name was, yes, Rika Furude. That was it. How long had it been? How old was she now? As he remembered her lovely smile, he also remembered the ominous prediction she made. He'd predict that if he didn't go back to Tokyo, something terrible would happen. At the time, he took this nonsense, but he felt something odd about it, as if it was a divine omen. Then he'd remembered Yuki, who was about to give birth. He became concerned that something terrible would happen to her. He couldn't just leave and go back to Tokyo. That's why he called her right away, told her something would happen. Told her to be very careful until he returned. Yuki had laughed and told him he was being paranoid. That phone call indeed saved her from calamity. Akasaka had found out when he visited her after returning to Tokyo. A few days after his phone call, January was seriously injured when he stepped on a loose tile on the stairs on the way to the roof. He also heard afterwards that Yuki had a habit of going up to the roof for a walk every day. Because of his phone call, she had stopped doing it. If he hadn't called her, she would have been the one to step on a loose tile. In other words, Rika Furude's prediction had been correct. There was no proof, but Akasaka still believed that he was able to save Yuki only because of Rika Furude's prediction. He intended to call to thank her for saving Yuki. Busy days that followed put it out of his mind. Rika-chan. He wondered if she was still doing well, if she was still smiling. Akasaka remembered the sad prediction she made on the night under the moon, while wearing that smile. That's right, she said something. She predicted someone would be killed on the night of the festival every year. On the 5th year, she'd be the one to be killed. Right, he thought. She did say that. 5th year. That's this year. Festival is... That's right, it's in June. He remembered correctly. It happened on the last Sunday of the month. Akasaka looked at the calendar. It was June 1983. Although there was still some time, the death she predicted for herself was coming up. The girl who predicted Yuki's accident had also prophesied a mysterious incident would occur annually for the next 5 years. It had actually been happening. It would happen again this year. Akasaka wondered if Oishi was still at the Okonomiya Police Department. The annual incident she predicted actually was taking place, he would know. In other words, he could confirm if Rika Furude was going to be killed or not with a phone call to Oishi. The girl who predicted her own death had muttered that she didn't want to die. Muttered? No, it was clearly a plea for help. The young girl who was trapped in the fathomless, bizarre traditions of a village she couldn't escape had sought help from him, an outsider. She paid his reward in advance, in the form of foreseeing Yuki's accident. He had to get to her. He had to go save her. A flood of emotions filled him up. It felt as though he'd finally remembered something he was never supposed to forget. That's right, he had to go to Hinamizawa. He had to save the girl who asked him for help. So one thing that's different... So, we have a couple versions of his story, of Akasaka's story. We have the original, where he ignores her plea, stays there, finishes the case, goes home, and his wife and kid are dead. We have the version that was in the last one, which is Rika warns him, he gets worried, he abandons his task in the police force, goes home, and saves her that way. Now we have this way, where he calls her, saves her that way, and still is there to finish his job and save the grandson.
どちら様でしょうか。
警視庁の赤坂とお伝えください。
Wish he was a very lively person, but he'd been old even back then. Maybe he'd already transferred somewhere else, or maybe he'd since retired. If he was still there, he'd be happy to hear from Akasaka. He sure had a unique laugh.
おいさん、外線からお電話です。東京の警視庁からですよ。
東京？そりゃまた遠くからはるばるどちら様ですか。はい、もしもし、大石です。え？こりゃ懐かしい。どうです？お元気にしてましたか？な。
And so this is also different in the last one where he comes back to have a holiday because he remembered liking the village, but he didn't remember Rika's plea at the time. This time he's going there because he remembers that. Okay, and we've since advanced past connecting fragments, which took us like a whole 10 hours. No new tips. Were there any tips whatsoever? No. So this is how Akasaka's piece is introduced into the game. Hanyu has already grown used to being around us. Since Rika-chan and Sadako are her age, she's become especially close with them. She's also living with them, so that helps. Her friend and Miyana are looking after her too. Friend had told me something the day Hanyu joined the class. She said that Hanyu's been close to us for a long time, that she's been watching us play and that she's always wanted to join us. I still can't remember seeing her before, but somehow I can believe it. Hanyu's accepted all the things that surprised me at first as if she knew about them all along. Knows everything about us, and it seems like she's truly excited about finally being able to join in.
羽生もすっかり僕たちの仲間に溶け込みましたのです。
だな。なんだかずっと前からそうだったように感じるよ。そんなはずはないのにな。
そんなことありませんです。ずっと僕たちのそばにいましたですよ。
あれ、リカちゃんもそんなこと言うんだな。レナも言ってたよ。俺だけが気づいてなかったのかな。
ケイイチは鈍感だからきっと気づかなかったに違いないのです。
どうせ俺は鈍感ですよだ。
リカとケイイチが座り込んでいますのです。疲れましたですか？羽生が疲れ知らずなだけなのです。僕たちは遊びすぎてヘトヘトなのですよ。だって僕はずっとみんなと一緒に遊びたかったから、これくらいでは遊び足りないのです。もっともっと遊びますですよ。
元気だな。ところで羽生さ、その頭のそれ。
It's about time someone finally asked, like, hey, why do you have demon horns?
遊んでて落ちちゃわないのか
Honey has horns on her head. I thought that was a hair accessory of the sword, so I didn't want to lose it while playing. I was going to offer to hold it for her while she ran around. Honey's face clouded over and she apologetically held onto the horns.
ケイイチ、羽生のは取れませんのです。
え？あ、そうなのか？変なこと言ってごめん。
More literally, Keiichi said sorry about saying something weird.
あるとおかしいでしょうか。おかしくなんかないよ。キュートでかいよ。
そうそう。
相変わらずレナさんのパンチだけは見切れませんわね。大丈夫ですのミオンさん。顔面がへこんでますわよ。
Everyone left except Hanyu didn't seem to get it. I shouldn't have said anything. I bet she doesn't like to talk about her horns. If I try to apologize, I think things will get even more complicated. I thought about what to say when I took the girls over to the shrine gate.
気にしなくていいのですよ。羽生も気にしないようにしているのですが、 まだ修行が足りないということなのです。
やっぱ気にしてたんだな。すまん。これからは気をつけるぜ。
羽生は大昔にこのひなみ沢にやってきました。
あ、やっぱりだよな。村の中のことを転校生にしちゃ随分詳しかったしな。
羽生がひなみ沢に住む前、どこに住んでいたのかはよく知りません。
I asked her once, but all she said was, it was a place I wouldn't understand. Hanyu said that she, or rather, Hanyu's people couldn't live there anymore. They looked for a new place to live for a long time. Traveled a very long way before arriving in Hinamizawa. There was a beautiful swamp in the area, and that's exactly what Hanyu's people were looking for. There was a village nearby where people lived. To show respect to the original inhabitants of the area, it was law among wandering people like Hanyu's. Her clan decided to live peacefully and coexist with the villagers. However, their attempts to coexist didn't go so well. The villagers were too childish and immature to accept these newcomers. They strongly rejected them and caused a terrible, tragic disaster. So these are the alleged demons who joined the village. Hanyu said she took their form and descended upon this land in order to subdue the disaster. However, she just couldn't hide her horns. Forbidden ancient documents said that Hanyu descended into the Furude Shrine, appearing as she does today. It also states the following. Hanyu's people can't live anywhere other than this village. They can also only live by coexisting with the villagers. Furude Shrine's priest once rejected them, claiming that coexistence was impossible. Mixing the wandering people's blood caused the villagers to become demons. But the young heir of the Furude Shrine fell in love with Hanyu, and when their child was born, the priest had to reconsider. A wandering people who could not hide your horns, who wish to settle this land, who wish to settle with our blood, I shall consider granting your wish. However, as the demon's blood mixed with the villagers, it became hard to tell who is human and who is demon. The villagers began to cast suspicion on one another, haunted by that paranoia. Unless all of that was resolved, coexistence would be impossible. For you and us to coexist, we must lay down several laws for us to follow. They will be very strict, and I'm very, very sorry for imposing these upon you who have lived in peace until now. For as long as those rules are followed, the village will be free from demonic disaster. Very well, the rules will be followed. But much blood has already been shed in the village. Anger, sins, and corruption. People cannot be cleansed. The one law of the human world is that sins are atoned for with life. I see. If you say it is your way to let someone take on all the responsibility and bury the sins with them, then we'll do that. However, wouldn't people end up pushing responsibility on each other because nobody wants to die? Exactly, that's the ugly demon in the world of man. No one will accept their sins, but only foist them onto each other. Since they can only clear the balance with their lives, everyone refuses to pay and the sins just keep adding up. Without cleansing them, they stagnate, and people cast them upon each other forever, doubting each other and passing them around. I see, if that is the unopposable law of this world, you yourselves are troubled by this law. In exchange for coexisting with us, I shall grant you a world where people don't have to blame their sins on each other. What kind of world is it? So long as mankind exists, they will commit sins and give rise to corruption. How could all that be erased without foisting it onto someone else? Let me bear all the sins and corruption born from man, and purify my soul. Let all sins not rest with man. They are born upon myself, and man will not need to force them on each other. What are you saying? Are you really going to make yourself into a sacrifice? Someone has to take on the sins, otherwise they won't be cleansed. That's the law of your world, isn't it? A different ancient document also states the following. Of course, it's a forbidden one, too. Only the head of the Furude family is allowed to read it. Nobody else, not even the heads of the other 3 families. It tells that unrest grew in people's minds, and the villagers' evil hearts collected in the swamp and gave rise to demons. Furude Shrine's priest explained that the root of all evil is the demon god of the swamp and led the young villagers there. By the swamp, they found a demon mocking the unrested people's hearts. Young villagers fought bravely, captured the demon, and dragged it to the Fude shrine. Priests cleansed the demon god, opened her abdomen and dragged out her organs. He chopped them up and washed them down the stream, and threw the body in the swamp. Then people regained their sanity. Those who had been suspicious of each other became friendly, and they all shared in the joy of peace again. These forbidden ancient documents are real, and the object of the village's worship, Ueshiro-sama, was captured by the villagers, forced to bear all their sins, and torn to death. Thus it's clearly written that the demons appeared after unrest ruined people's hearts. In other words, the demons were forced to bear the sin of discord that rested with man long before they arrived. Ueshiro-sama was a god who took on people's sins to mend conflict between them. People eventually came to honor her, and said that became the foundation of faith in Ueshiro-sama. I don't understand exactly what that means, but I know one thing. When none of us humans would draw the losing straw, she often drew it in our stead. To prove it, we cleanse our filth by letting cotton absorb it and drift it down the stream during the Watnagashi festival. There's no shame or shifting of responsibility involved. Until that system was created, we were simply demons who pushed our filth and our responsibility onto each other. We could only cleanse our own sins by blaming someone else and sacrificing him by cutting open his abdomen. And Hanyu took on that job. Purification ceremony without a human life. A system that forgives people for their sins. That is the origin of the cult of Ueshiro-sama, which blames not people for their sins, but the curse. Those documents were sealed away. They weren't. People would find out that the object of their own faith was falsely blamed and killed by their own ancestors. Hanyu apologizes. He takes in people's sins and keeps apologizing. When people can't deal with their own sins anymore, she accepts them. When Hanyu takes over, people are cleansed and they are allowed to keep living. Demons take on sins by becoming cotton to absorb them. They are exterminated and washed down the stream, and then the village is forgiven. They are forgiven for their sins. That's all true, then Hanyu, rather Ueshiro-sama, has such a tragic existence. I've asked Hanyu about this before, and she told me the following story. 4 people are stuck in a snowy mountain cabin. They play a game where each one of them sits in one of the 4 corners. It's a fairly well-known story. In the middle of winter, they're all getting sleepy. If they fall asleep, they'll die. So one of them comes up with an idea. They're sitting in the 4 corners of the room, so someone just has to walk clockwise to the next corner and wake up the person sitting in that corner. The one who just walked will sit in that corner, and the one who just woke up will get up, walk to the next corner, and wake the person sitting there. If they keep doing that, nobody will fall asleep. People who know the story won't need an explanation, but this doesn't work with 4 people. When the first person gets up, their corner becomes empty. After everyone takes turns, the 4th person goes to the next corner, which is an empty one. They sit down and fall asleep, so the game is over right there and everyone freezes to death. In other words, to play this game you need more than 4 people. You need 1 more person in order to be saved. People usually tell this as a ghost story. They usually say that this was actually a group of 5 people, but one was already dead, and thanks to that ghost, they were able to keep living until the next morning. Hanyu once told me that she's like that 5th person. She can make everything run smoothly by joining a circle of people then. It's very similar to how the telephone game in the mountain cabin manages to function without breaking. Hanyu can complete a circle that can't be realized by people alone. Then those people can live peacefully. She's an existence that completes a circle. Is she bothered by the horns that remind her of the time when she was called a demon and punished for the sin she took in? Is her subconscious still tormenting her with the thoughts that those who have horns ought to be persecuted?
そうなのか？そりゃますます悪いことを言っちまったな。
そして羽生はその角があるがゆえに生産するというとてもとても大きなお役目を全うし神と崇められたのです。
え、神？
僕の独り言なのです。忘れて大丈夫なのですよ。
Nobody knows who Hanyu really is. Truly a divine existence that descended from a higher place? She's simply an unlucky girl who became a sacrifice just because she had a pair of horns? Nobody knows. This girl's blood was blended with the Furude family's blood, and that blood has descended into me. Our legends state that the Furude family had a girl for their firstborn child for 8 generations in a row. Their 8th child will be a reincarnation of Oyashiro-sama. I don't know exactly what that means, but I'm the 8th generation. Is that why I'm the only person who could see Hanyu? 8 generations is a very long time. Maybe that's how long it took for all the sins Hanyu assumed to be cleared. 8 represents infinity. It's a very lucky number. Often curses will contain, I'll curse you for 7 generations, but the 8th lies beyond that. In other words, 8 possesses such good fortune that can forgive great curses and sins that span 7 generations. It's a number with power. It's the time Hanyu needed to cleanse all the sins she took from the humans. Hanyu and her people simply wanted to coexist with us. Hanyu had become a sacrifice. Her stomach was cut open and its contents washed down the stream. Then she was thrown into the swamp. And so the Furude family's been waiting. They waited for a very long time for her to come back. We kept our traditions alive, waiting forever and ever for her return. According to the legend, the name Furude was made by adding a horn to the character for fortune teller. The Furude family rose when Hanyu's bloodline was combined with that of human beings. Hanyu is the ancestor of the Furude family, as well as the mother of all of us. When I was little, Hanyu taught me a lot more things than my mother did. It's no wonder I'm her descendant. The curse of the clan who exorcised and buried their very own mother was finally absolved after 8 generations, what seemed like eternity. And then she met me, her descendant, the final generation of the Furude family. Sometimes when I think about that, I feel like there must be some important meaning to this hapless fate thrust upon me. What kind of meaning could the trial I face, the trial breaking through the obstacles sealing my fate, have upon the curse that plagued Hanyu, the Furude family for over a millennium? 1,000 years is simply too long a period to communicate thoughts and intentions correctly. Hanyu has become the curse we call Oyashiro-sama. Though she originally was means of salvation, she has become a chain that binds people. The rules about coexisting were misinterpreted as the law that binds villagers to this place. That continued until the Meiji era. While the village winds once again blow towards the misunderstanding of isolation thanks to the dam conflict. There's that play into my meeting with Hanyu, and this motley fate we're trapped in. I haven't lived long enough to be able to understand that. The only thing I can say for sure is the Furude family originated when Hanyu's bloodline mixed with that of humans, and the line's final descendant, me, finally met with its ancestor. The Furude bloodline bears a cursed history of placing all of man's sins onto its mother and killing her. Now, the beginning and end of that line have met. Hanyu always wanted to join everyone, but she couldn't hide her horns. Even so, she still wished to be an existence that completes a circle. It's Job's child to bury their parents. Mother, I've never heard that it's child's job to kill and bury their parents. Don't ask, child. I'm not human. My horns are proof that I'm a demon. A demon's job is to take on the calamities of the human world. Bearing the calamities of this chaotic world and cleansing the unrest in mankind's hearts is my role. Mother, why do you have to be the one? People's sins are people's sins. They aren't yours. Listen, child. People live with their sins. They can't live without making someone else take the blame. Nobody wants to take the blame, so they shift that responsibility around. That is a demon, the true demon disrupting the world of man. By bearing it myself, man may be cleansed and mankind can be freed from their destiny of doubt and conflict. But all the sins, the filth, the karma, and the curse come to me. When they attack me, purify me, and wash me down the stream and throw me in the swamp. A human will not do, so is the fate of one not human to accept that role. If the human were made to bear it, then mankind would not be freed from the demon of doubt. I don't understand. I don't understand, Mother. Mother, you have horns. Are you saying that you aren't human just because you have horns? But even if you are human, the horns make me non-human? Even if you have horns, you're human to me. My child, you're the only one who's ever said that. Even if everyone calls me curses that they beeped out, you still call me human. It was passed down the Fruide's many forbidden scrolls, the one unknown, even the heads of the three families, sealed in the altar in the shrine storage. Understanding that would probably require about as much time as I've spent repeating time. Yet once you understand that, perhaps you'll better understand the smile Hanyu wears as she innocently plays with everyone. I heard Mion yell in surprise. Something must have happened.
どうしたんだ？
羽生さんがそこでふざけてて転んで斜面を転げ落ちていったんですわ。羽生ちゃん、大丈夫？
綺麗に転がってったけど、捻挫とかしてないかな。行こう行こう。
And he had been playing on the slope and tumbled down it. There was a road just below the slope. Mion and the others went down the stairs to get her. Let's go. I hope she isn't injured. When I got there, I saw Tomitake-san and Takano-san. They were taking care of her.
これはどういうことなんだい？急に彼女が転がり落ちてきてね。
ずいぶん綺麗に転がってきたわね。でも頭をゴチンとやってしまったみたいだから、後でコブになってしまうかもね。よく冷やしておいた方がいいわよ。
羽生、私たちの声が聞こえます？ほら、指は何本に見えますの？
She sounded disoriented, but she didn't appear to be injured. What a relief to everyone. I bet she's just feeling dizzy from rolling.
でもよかったね。怪我がなくて。
いやはや。しかし、転がってった先に看護師さんがいてくれたなんてできすぎだね。
あら、非番の時の私は野鳥撮影家なのよ。ねえ、次郎さん。
まあね、そういうことさ。
まあ、ひなみ沢っ子なら、このくらいで怪我はできねえよな。羽生も、もう立派なひなみ沢の仲間ってことだぜ。
羽生ちゃんっていうの？見かけない子ね。新しいお友達？
ええ、そうですわよ。月曜日に転校してきたばかりなんですのよ。
これ、何？変わってるわね。おもちゃ
Takano-san tried to poke at one of Hanyu's horns. It'd be an interesting hair accessory, if they were an accessory.
それは羽生ちゃんのチャームポイントなので、取っちゃダメなんです。
あら、そうなの？私はあまり可愛くないと思うんだけど。だってほら、化け物みたいじゃない？
Jeez. Suddenly, Hanyu moaned as if suffocating.
高野、羽生は化け物じゃありませんです。二度と言ったら許さないのです。
そうだよ、高野さん。人の趣味に悪いよ。
ごめんなさいね。決してそんなつもりはなかったんだけど。
Rika-chan said it rather firmly. I'm sure Hanyu doesn't want to hear that word. Sometimes Takano-san says things in a derogatory way without realizing it herself. I guess there's things you can't or shouldn't say. Hanyu's looking at Takano-san with a complicated look on her face. Seeing that expression, Takano-san realized she might have hurt her feelings. She apologized and left Tomitake-san.
大丈夫？羽生、綺麗に転げ落ちたから、大して怪我はないそうです。
So, something that's interesting about Hanyu is the way her character model gets loaded into the game is different from all the other characters. So if you watch it, all the other characters just kind of like appear. Hanyu like fades, she like gets like pixelated in, and then gets like pixelated out from bottom to top and then top to bottom. It's an interesting thing. She also sometimes appears like directly behind a person before they've vanished, as if she has the ability to like just teleport behind them, which is reminiscent of her ability to walk behind people as the spirit she has been for the past 7 games. Honey repeated Takano-san's name. All of a sudden I grew worried that she hit her head or something. Honey stood straight up and grabbed Rika-chan's collar. So, Rika as well has had her memory wiped of the incident at the end of the last time where she gets ritualistically disemboweled. And she did that to try and remember what happened. But she clearly hasn't. But Hanu's just remembered.
知ってるわよ。高野美代でしょ。入江診療所の。思い
出せないのですか？
ごめん、羽生。何の話？リ
カ、そんな。
It's the last one. The last one. She finally imprinted herself with the true enemy's name while enduring the pain of her stomach being cut open. Yet she can't remember? Rika Furude has failed to inherit the memory of the fragments.
No! 赤坂さん、ご無沙汰しておりますよ。
大石さん、その後もお変わりなく。
お変わりなくなんてひどいです。最近リンゴダイエットっていうのを始めましてね、ちょいと体重が絞れてきたつもりだったんですがね、そういう赤坂さんはこれまた見違えるくらいたくましく、
この程度には鍛えてないと体が持ちませんので。
あれ、クラちゃん、その人あの人かい？何年か前にうちに来た東京の公安の。
本田屋さん、ご無沙汰しております。その節はお世話になりました。
あんた随分とまあ立派に成長しちゃったじゃないですか。かあ、若いっていいね。
さあさあさあ、せっかく来てくれたんです。もうお店に行っちゃいましょう。馴染みの店ですからのれん前でも入れてくれるでしょう。さあさあ行きましょう。
大石さん、いいんですか？まだ勤務時間中じゃないんですか？
何言ってんですか。東京本庁からいらっしゃられた特命刑事との特別研修ですよ。さあさあ行きましょう。ああ、ちょいと先に電話してきます。赤坂さんに比べたらカモネギみたいな連中ですがね、ちょいとメンツを揃えまして。ああ、いいところに。クマちゃん、今夜バチッとポンチしに行きませんか？
大石さん、本当に変わっておられませんね。
Akasaka used to think she wasn't serious enough at work. After experiencing many different things in the real world, that preconception has completely disappeared. But she's that way because of this experience. Always best to take things seriously. This world, sometimes being that frank can help. In Akasaka's case, people often tell him to relax more. In Oishi's case, maybe he should straighten out a little.
赤坂さん、行きましょう。
ええ、参りましょう。
いい返事で、だいぶベテランの余裕ができてきました。そうでなくちゃ。
Evil Akasaka would have thought Oishi was making fun of him, but by now, take it as an honest assessment. Hey, out of the trash. Hey, what did I just say? Huh? Hey.
ご謙遜を。それに私が強いのは情報収集が下戸では務まらないからです。ちゃんと予算を切って常に若手と特訓してますから。日本酒、洋酒、紹興酒、のれんをくぐることもあればミラーボールのお店の時もありますよ。
そりゃいいそりゃいい。今度ぜひ私も高知に参りますよ。
ええ、ぜひ享受してやってください。最近の若いのは自分は生まれつき飲めないとか、私だって最初は全然ダメでしたからね。酒は飲めば飲むほどに強くなります。
そうですそうです。聞いてますかクマちゃん。
面目ないっす。これでもだいぶ強くなったんですよ。
そうだの。大石と組まされたばかりの頃はお前乾杯からウーロン茶だったからの。
それはいけない。乾杯は重要な意味があるんです。そこでアルコールを飲まないというのは自分はこの飲み会に福があるって言ってるようなもんなんです。だから私はそんなことする若手どもには一気飲みしろって言ってんじゃない。とにかく最初の一杯だけは中ジョッキ。
Nakasaka first came to Okonomiya, he was very nervous. There's no trace of that tension left in him. Seeing that, Oishi realized just how much Akasaka had learned in the past few years.
よっ、赤坂さんかっこいい。いやもう本当に頼もしくなっちゃいましたね。私にとっては定年までの残り数年でしかなかった間に赤坂さんはこれほどたくましく成長したんですから。いやいや、老兵は去るべきだと痛感します。
そんなことはないです。私も嫌になるくらい経験がものを言う世界というのを勉強しました。力仕事や現場仕事なんかは私たち若造に任せて、大石さんのようなベテランにはぜひデスクで胸を張ってこき使ってもらいたいもんです。
ですってよ。聞いてますかクマちゃん。
いたたたたたたた、すいませんすいません、頑張るっす。
大石、熊谷君も頑張っちょるぞい。めんどくさがりのお前さんに代わってよくまめに歩き回っとる。
大石さんはめちゃくちゃな人でしょ。私が大石さんと組んだのはほんの数日間だったんですが、でもね、大石さんがきっとあなたを鍛えてくれますから、最後まで信じてついていって。
わかりました、頑張るっす。お酒は鍛えられても麻雀までは無理っすよ。かみさんに給料を渡す前に大石さんに取られるんです。
いや、麻雀も経験なんです。打った場数が強さと自信になるんですよ。後でご一緒しましょう。まずは負けない打ち方を伝授します。
大石、いい若者だの。お前さんが無茶やってた頃にちょっとだけ似とるの。
まさかまさか、私はこんな2枚目じゃありませんでしたから。
It was unusual for Oishi to enjoy anyone's company this much. Akasaka and Oishi only worked together for a few days. Exchanged some holiday cards since, but that was about it. Oishi had no idea how happy it would make him to see a greenhorn grow into a dependable cop. Oishi always thought he wanted to be active until the day he retired. After seeing such a dependable colleague, he began to think maybe it was time for him to step down. Oishi and Akasaka enjoyed the reunion more than they thought they would. The owner of the place was bringing the electric sign inside. All the chairs were up on the tables, and the owner's wife was cleaning the floor. There's no one else around. Judging by the clock, it was almost 3 a.m.
クラちゃんたちは久しぶりの再会なんでしょ。ゆっくりしてっていいよ。帰る時だけ起こしてくれねえかな。
すんませんな、気を使わせちゃって。
There wouldn't be anything else open at such a late hour. Wishing his colleagues still wouldn't talk, so they decided to stay. Like he couldn't fight his sleepiness and was nodding off. They were talking about Akasaka's job. Akasaka works in a department specializing in public safety. Wishing the others were interested in all the stories about danger and bravery.
実はこちらに来たら、フルデリカという少女。
フルデリカって、フルデ家の忘れがたみのリカちゃまですか？
忘れがたみということは、彼女の両親は
Rikaverde had predicted there would be an instant in Hinamizawa every year for the following 5 years. Her parents supporting her were supposed to be killed on the 3rd year running.
ねえ、あれはお社様のたたりの3年目ですから。昭和56年ですかね。フルデ夫妻がちょいと引っかかる形でお亡くなりになりまして、赤坂さんが南沢に行かれてからちょうど3年後の話です。
3年後。私が南沢を訪れてから3年後の。
ねえ、そうです。どうしました？何か気にかかることでも？
Akasaka shut his eyes tightly to chase away the alcohol in his brain and tried to remember the girl's prediction. Had, after all, come here to confirm it.
その翌年にダム建設の監督が亡くなられたということは、そうだ。彼は私と麻雀を打った方のはず。あの方はその後どうなさっていますか？
新聞にドーンと載ったと思ったんですが、その翌年に作業員たちとの喧嘩で殺されてしまいまして。
Rikaverde had predicted to be killed in a gruesome way and that his body would be dismembered.
その遺体をバラバラにされたということは？
なんだ、知ってるじゃないですか。その通りです。未だ右腕が見つかりませんでね。お気の毒なことです。
Following years, on the same day, June 1980, Saiko's parents would be pushed to their deaths. Maybe it should be called an accident, a lamentable accident.
続けて確認します。さらにその翌年、監督の殺人事件の確か里子さんという多分女性の方だと思います。その方のご両親が。
おや、お詳しいですね。そうです。ダムの賛成派だった北条夫妻が旅行先の展望台から転落しましてね。事故か事件か未だにはっきりしませんが。
Following year on the same day in June 1981, my parents will be killed.
そして、
はい、フルで理科のご両親がですが、どうもこいつも今一つ腑に落ちない事件でしたね。
お前さん、随分とお社様のたたり関係に詳しいの。この事件、地元の圧力であまり公にされとらんはずなんだが。
なんてことだ。
だがいくらお前さんでも次の年は無理だろうの。何しろ4年目から秘匿捜査指定がかかっとる。
いえ、多分わかります。
Following year on the same day in June 1982, Sadako's mean aunt will die, her head will be smashed
その翌
in.
年ですから、つまり昨年です。先ほどの里子さんの叔母にあたる方が。
そうです。赤坂さん、どうしてそんなことまでご存知なんですか？
多分私はさらにその翌年に殺される人物も知っています。
お前さん、何第一、去年の翌年中たら、そら今年のことだろうが。
I'll be killed.
昭和58年6月、つまり今月です。フルでリカが殺されます。
Wishing the others were at a loss for words, Akasaka had talked about 4 mysterious incidents. Though he'd been far away, and he belonged to a very special unit of public safety, it could have been possible for him to find out about their secret investigations. That was why it wasn't odd for Akasaka to mention the series of mysterious deaths, even though he'd been far away from Hinamizawa. However, not only did he know about them, he also named the next victim. Wishing his co-workers had sobered up entirely.
もう夜もだいぶ更けました。これ以上はお互いしんどいんで、今の話は一体どういう意味ですか？
はい、今の話は私がひなみ沢を訪れた。
なんですって？
She couldn't believe what he was hearing. He was left speechless.
それを聞いた当時の私も幼い少女の気まぐれな予言遊びくらいに思いました。ですが彼女は5年目に自分が殺されることを私に訴えました。それはつまり自分を助けてほしいという明白なメッセージだったと思うんです。今回ひなみ沢を訪れた最大の目的は彼女を訪ね、本当に今でも私の助けを必要としているのかを確かめ。
赤坂さん、私はね、今年で定年なんです。連続開始事件の1年目に殺されたおやすさんの仇をどうしても年内に取りたいんです。ですから私はどんな些細な情報でも怪しげな情報でも飛びつきます。だから一応確認させてください。今の話は冗談じゃないですよね。なんかの冗談なら今のうちにそうだと言ってくださいよ。
私は真実しか言っていません。フルデリカは昭和53年6月に。ただ当時の私はそれを重要な話とは思わず、それを大石さんに伝えませんでした。それは申し訳なく。
いや、それは無理もないぞい。そんな話突然されても鵜呑みにできん。4年連続した今だから聞ける話だわい。
She must have been thinking that only Akasaka had told him back then he could have helped save his friend. The old man from forensics just said was right too. Wish she wouldn't have believed him back then. His friend would have died anyway, and wish he would have been left with regret at not being able to do anything.
いえ、すみませんでした。しかしフルデリカがどうして、
今のひなみ沢の状況は私も詳しくありません。一応当時の新聞でダム計画の無期凍結が決定されたというのは読みました。ですからダム戦争は終わって平穏な生活を取り戻していると信じていたのですが。
ダム戦争は確かに終わった。だがな、その翌年からな、通称お社様のたたりと呼ばれる連続開始事件が毎年起こるようになってな。その詳細についてはまさにお前さん。
どうやら私は彼女に大変な何かを託されたよ。大石さん、ズバリお尋ねします。今年フルデリカが殺されるのは？
フルデ夫妻はダム戦争当時消極的だったことを理由に後ろ指を刺されていたという話。それで3年目のたたりにあったというのが定説です。その流れから言えばフルデリカ殺しは
あり得るんですね。
She nodded slowly.
フルデリカに接触を試みるつもりです。どうやら彼女に直接話を聞くしかないようですからね。
赤坂さん、それ私もご一緒させてくれませんか？フルデリカの話はどうやら私にとっても重要なものになりそうです。
こりゃお前さん、なんともとんでもない土産を持ってきてくれたもんだの。わしもちょいと面白くなってきたぞい。煙に巻かれたまま終わると思ってた怪事件が解けるのに
しかし疑問もありますね。どうしてこんな重要な話を私だけに打ち明けたのでしょう。助けを求めるなら東京から出張してきた私ではなく地元警察のはずなのですが。
多分地元警察を信用しきれないところがあったのです。私も泥臭い人間です。リカさんの信用を得ていなかったのかもしれない。それに沖宮署には S 号の息のかかった連中も少なからず潜んでいます。
つまり東京から来た私が一番信用できたということですね。
悔しいですがそういう。
だとしたら大石さん、この件他にはない道に。
もちろんですとも。とにかく明日ひなみ沢に行って リカさんに直接話を伺ってみましょう。話はそれからです。
信じられないわ。でもそれが真実なのね。
It was the middle of the night. Oh, hi. Hi, Cheerio. You surprised me. Riku was sitting by her favorite window.
そうなのです。リカを殺すのはタカノなのです。
Darling, don't do that.
僕もリカもはっきりと見ましたのです。リカは高野の顔を目に焼き付けようと、意識のあるままにお腹を裂かれてもなお歯を食いしばってその顔を見ていたのです。
嫌な死に方ね。毎回記憶に残ってなかったの。でもなんとなくわかる。高野の好みそうな殺し方だもの。でもわからない。どうして高野が私を殺すの？だって私は女王感染者で、私が死ねば大惨事になるんでしょう。だから入江機関や山犬たちが私を守ってくれてるんじゃないの？そのてっぺんにいる高野がどうして私を殺さなくちゃならないの？ごめん、意味のない質問ね。高野が私を殺す。それが真実なのであって、その動機なんか大した問題じゃないものね。しかしだとし、よりによってなぜ高野なの？
Although she just said the motive didn't matter, Riku went back to the same question. The reason why Takano was protecting the Queen Carrier wasn't because she wanted to prevent the rest of Hinamizawa from developing the syndrome, because the Queen Carrier was an extremely valuable subject of her research. And considering that value, why did she kill the Queen Carrier with her own two hands?
山犬の人たちも敵でした。入江が敵かは分かりませんでしたが、多分敵じゃなかったと思いますです。
高野と山犬が敵？冗談じゃない。私たち小娘がどう立ち向かえって言うの？無理よ。奇跡でも起きない限り、あんな奴らに私たちが勝てるわけがない。しかも綿流しは次の日曜日。私が殺されるのはあと1週間ってところ。そのわずかな時間でどう戦うの？高野を金属バットで闇討ちにでもしてみる？意味ないわ。高野は所詮高野一人を返り討ちにしたって山犬たちに取り囲まれておしまいよ。どうすればいいのよ。どうすれば。
そんなの僕だってわからないのです。でも今までは何度繰り返したって敵の名前だってわからなかったじゃないですか。それをやっと掴んだのです。やれることがあるはずなんです。
This was the first time in a long time that Hanyu had spoken so positively. Riku was startled for a moment and realized she was losing her cool. She took a deep breath and tried to calm herself down. She was still confused that Takano was the culprit. Riku had always thought of Takano as her ally. There were, after all, many reasons why Takano should treat her well. Riku couldn't even think of one reason why Takano would want to kill her. Still, Takano was always thinking about bizarre things. There was no guarantee that a crazy idea of hers couldn't become a motive.
富武は殺されてる。つまり富武は味方？
多分味方だと思いますです。そうですよ、リカ。富武に相談すればいいのです。
Takano was accompanied by the Mountain Dogs because of an organization named Tokyo. So could Rika ask for help from someone affiliated with that organization? In that case, Tomotaku was the only one she could talk to about the issue. Though Irie might also be worth having a talk with. Then, that was why she needed to know. She needed to know why Takano wanted to kill her. Unless she could explain that, they probably wouldn't even believe her. Besides, Tomotaku was in love with Takano. He wouldn't doubt her so easily. Irie seemed to be keeping a little distance from Takano. He might be a little more inclined to believe. Someone who was simply a doctor, he knew little about Tokyo. It would end up being useless to Rika. Then, should she call the police? No way. Definitely no way. There's no way they'd believe her. She was to make a call and say a strange organization in Tokyo was trying to kill her, they'd think she was crazy. Then what could she do? How could she save herself? The scariest people in Hinamizawa were coming to kill her. How could she run from them? How could she fight them? How? If she'd remembered the scene of Takano killing her, then she wouldn't have been so confused. Yes, seeing is believing, but she didn't remember. This was just what Hani was telling her. She didn't want Takano to be her enemy. This was a truth she didn't want to accept, so she was tempted to just say that this was all simply Hanyu's delusion.
落ち着くのです、リカ。前の世界で僕たちは学んだはずなのです。覚えていませんですか？前の世界のことを。
前の世界ってあれでしょ？レナが学校にガソリンをまいて立てこもって。違
いますです。その次にもう一つ世界があったのです。本当に覚えてないのですか？その世界ではあいつが帰ってくるのです。北条鉄平が。
最悪の世界ね。何をやっても相談所は様子見で、聡子は数日で廃人同然。どうせ仲間の誰かが発症して鉄平を闇討ちにするんでしょ。
違います違います。そこではみんなが力を合わせて相談所に陳情してちゃんと聡子を救ったのです。その世界でリカは圭一にあれだけ教えられたじゃないですか。奇跡は信じなきゃ起きない。そしてみんなが信じれば必ず奇跡が起こるって。
確かに圭一が言いそうなことね。でもすごいわね。今まで一度も退けられなかった鉄平の帰宅する世界を打ち破るなんて。
その世界の圭一たちはどうやって奇跡を起こすか知ってますですか？みんなにですね、ちゃんと相談したのです。どうせダメだとか一人で悩んだりとかしないでみんなに相談したのです。だから奇跡が起こせたのです。
みんなにって圭一たちに高野のことを相談しろと？東京という怪しげな組織に狙われているから助けてって相談して信じてくれると思ってるの？
信じてくれますです。前の世界では信じてくれましたのです。なんでリカは僕が言うのを信じてくれませんのですか？
ごめんなさい。信じないわけじゃないの。羽生が見たんだから。それは真実なんだものね。自分の記憶に残らないというのがこんなにも温度差を感じさせてしまうものだったなんて。
とにかくリカと僕が2人で悩んでも何も解決できませんです。僕たち2人の力ではあまりに非力なのです。でも僕たちには武器があります。それは真実です。動機はよくわかんないけど、でも犯人は高野だってわかってます。だからこれはこれまでの世界で一番有利なスタートのはずなんです。それなのになんで最後の最後でリカだけ記憶がつながらないのです。
He ground her teeth remorsefully. She saw the truth just a short time ago, so she couldn't believe that Rika didn't remember anything. It was something she'd seen herself, then she wouldn't even need a motive. But she hadn't, and that's why she couldn't understand. Why was her memory missing, even when Honey's memory was still intact? I mean, their long journey was about to end? Perhaps her infinitely repeating journey was already over, and this was the last world of all.
羽生がみんなにも見えて、しかも転校までしてくるなんて、なんだか変な世界だなとは思ってたけど、
どうやらここはとびっきりおかしな世界みたいね。
おかしくも何もありません。ただ最後の世界なだけなのです。僕はその最後の世界でみんなと力を合わせるために僕はここでは傍観者じゃない、理科のみんなの仲間で味方なのです。
そういえばそうね。あんた傍観者をやめたのね。
僕はもう傷つくことを恐れて舞台に上がらないなんて嫌なのです。それを恐れずにみんなと信じる。だから奇跡が起こせる。これは昭和58年6月をかけたゲームの世界なのです。戦っているのは理科と高野。期限までに理科が敵を倒せないと自動的に負けになる。高野たちは山犬という強力な駒をいくつも少々の駒を集めたくらいではとても太刀打ちできないのです。だから理科はあらゆる人に助けを求め、対等な数だけ駒を揃えなければこのゲーム版のルールを僕たちは何度も繰り返しながら学んできましたのです。それはまるで説明書のないゲームのよう。でも僕たちは何度も学び、そしてようやく戦い方を知り、さらに敵方の駒の正体まで最初から分かっているという破格のリードがもらえましたのです。理科、ぼんやりしてる場合じゃないのです。綿流しまであと1週間。前の世界は2週間の猶予で始まりましたのですが、つまりこれが最後の世界なのです。
わかったわ。私が覚えていないことの不幸を嘆くより、あなたが覚えていてくれた幸運を喜ぶべきね。それに圭一たちへの相談もうまく話し方を考えれば何しろ学校大爆発がほぼ確定したあの世界でレナと大立ち回りをして正気に戻させるという。
そうです。とにかく話せる人に相談しましょうです。僕たちだけではあまりにか弱いのです。仲間を集めどうするかを考えましょうです。奇跡の道も一歩からなのです。
しかもそれをたったの1週間でね。
Anya had never encouraged her like this before. She always pretended to be a bystander. She never wanted to go through the pain of failure. She never had expectations for anything. Now she's trying to intervene in this world so passionately and proactively. According to Anya, there had been another world after the one in which Rena occupied the school. Apparently, Keiichi really inspired her in that world. Rika had nothing to lose. She had to talk to whoever she thought she could trust. Whether she tried or not, she only had a very short time left. She decided to do whatever she possibly could until that time arrived. She would never again act like it was cool to sip wine pretending to be a witch as the end closed upon her.
もしもし、ご無沙汰しておりますわ。野村です。ええ、先日は詳細な資料をありがとうございました。厚生省のお歴々もあなたの丁寧な資料のおかげで南沢症候群の恐ろしさを理解してくださりました。すべてあなたと小高野先生の研究の成果ではありませんか。私は正当な研究が正当な評価を受けられるようにしたに過ぎませんわ。それはもちろんあなたの資料をやがては総理の手にも取らせてみせましょう。総理は一国の主、我が国で最も権力を持つ人物にあなたとあなたの祖父の論文を読ませ、それがいかに優れた研究であり、そして南沢症候群がいかに特別なものなのか。なのにその研究をないがしろにし、無残にもあなたとあなたの祖父の論文を土足で踏みにじった現理事会、彼らそんなあなたに朗報があります。終末作戦が終わった後、現地は隔離閉鎖され、陸自の別部門が 研究を引き継ぐこととなりました。あなたはそこへ迎え入れられ、派閥や予算に悩まされることなく、心ゆくまで研究をすることができるのです。あなたの献身的努力に報いたいとおっしゃられるクライアントの行為としか申せませんわ。あなたはそこで所長の地位を与えられ、今度こそ思うままに存分に研究に勤しむことができるのです。それはとても素晴らしいことではありません。そしてあなたはひなみ沢症候群の研究をステップの一つにし、高野先生が求められていた本当のステージ、いいえ、これはお世辞でも何でもありませんわ。あなたに対する私どものクライアントの正当な評価です。そうですか。長電話を失礼してしまいました。それでは失礼。また追ってご連絡いたします。
Woman put down the handset of her car phone. She picked it up again and made another call.
1001をお願いします。ええ、渡辺とお伝えを。渡辺です。ええ、先日の件はつつがなく終了しました。はい、高野三佐の資料は素晴らしいものです。さらに国立研究所の職員を同行させましたので、背広ええ、はい。そちらも問題ありません。20日以降から敵対派閥のほとんどの閣僚は外遊、もしくは西洋で東京を離れます。はい、不確定要素はいくつか残りますが、おそらく6月23日には官邸の堀は全て埋め尽くされているはずです。はい。ですので現地作戦は6月22日深夜に決行、23日に総理に緊急決裁を求める日程となると思い、はい、当日総理を補佐できるブレーンは全て我々側の人間です。総理は万に一つの疑問も抱かないでしょう。ええ、それは間違いなく総理は必ず緊急マニュアル第34号に署名します。その後はアルファベットへの責任追及となり、奥の千葉派、旧小泉派は発言力を大きく失うこととなるでしょう。ええ、そうです。今村先生の復権は時間の問題です。ですわね。
There's money to spend on developing domestic nuclear arms, the Japanese-American alliance spanning the Pacific. More profitable for our nation to spend it on ODA towards China. 21st century will be the era of China, with their nation claiming a good portion of the world's population. Japan gets nothing out of wagging its tail for the US anymore.
全くですわ。はい、わかりました。では来週マカオにてよろしくお願いいたします。私カジノは大好きですので、はい、それでは失礼いたします。また追ってご連絡いたします。
The woman put down the handset of her car phone and took a breath. She smiled in satisfaction, then picked up the handset again.
ええ、マイザーとお伝えを。はい、私です。
She's given 3 different names, plus her name at like the top of the text is different, so she's gonna have 4 different names in the span of 5 minutes. I think it's safe to say she's playing all of them, whoever this lady is. Alright, I expect we won't have any more tips. Yeah. After we did 52 tips. End of chapter 6. Ironically, we got an achievement for 8. This is the infinity symbol, as they discussed before. Yeah, this feels like a good place to stop after finishing that chapter.